Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the continuation of last week's Monroe County Plan Commission CDO hearing. If we could get started. Tech services, maybe if we could get a little bit more volume on the microphone. Okay, can everybody hear me? Is anybody else not able to hear me? Okay. Okay, there we go. That sounds louder. Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the continuation of last week's Monroe County Plan Commission CDO hearing. Jackie, if you could start with a roll call, please.
Sure. And just for the public's edification, this is a continuation from the September 24th, 2024 Plan Commission meeting. So this roll call is sort of like we went on recess for a few days and now we're back. I'll call the roll. Margaret Clemens. Here. Tron Enright Randolph.
Here.
Scott Ferris.
Here.
Jeff Morris.
Here.
Cheryl Munson. Edward Ullman.
Here.
Dee Owens.
Here.
Jerry Pittsford. Julie Thomas. Penny Githens from the County Commissioners. Lee Jones from the County Commissioners. Here. Okay, and then City of Bloomington Representative Chris Cockrum.
Here.
Okay, so we have 6 in-person Plan Commission members, 6 Plan Commission members attending in a quorum.
Okay.
TSD, my mic is not working.
Okay.
Cheryl Munson's about to walk in the door.
Okay. And Jackie, we've got Councilmember Munson entering the room also. So I want to mention, as the room is starting to fill up here, that we do have a TV located on the first floor where if the room fills up, you're welcome to watch the meeting down there. I will make sure that anybody that's on the first floor does get a chance to speak, though. So if you're on the first floor watching, just know that I will make an announcement as the room starts to clear out. You're welcome to come up to speak as the night progresses. So I want to start out by saying that given that this meeting is a continuation of last week's meeting on September the 24th, we do not need to reintroduce the evidence for tonight's meeting, so we will jump right in. So first of all, I'd like to thank everyone for attending. And for those of you that were not present at the September 24th meeting, I want to quickly introduce who is here. Our planning director and members of our planning staff. We have the Plan Commission here. The Plan Commission consists of 9 members, 4 of which are by virtue of office and 5 are volunteers. Of the 9 members on the Plan Commission, 3 are elected, the surveyor, commissioner, and council member. And we've also invited county commissioners, which are seated behind me, some members of the county council, township trustees, and other commissions to be present here with us tonight. So thank you all for joining us. So to begin with, our planning director, Jackie, will be going over a few key areas of focus for the CDO tonight. Once she's completed her presentation, I'll come back and discuss some shared understandings for the meeting and the format for the hearing. And please note that it is vital for all the side conversations in the room to take place outside of the room, as this meeting is being recorded and broadcast live on Teams. So out of respect for those here, please take side conversations outside. You're welcome to come and go from the room as you please, but so everybody online can hear, please keep conversation to a minimum here in the room. So we also have planners around the rotunda outside the room here to answer any questions that anyone may have. So Jackie, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Jeff. So I want to start just by giving everyone in the room some information that's going to be helpful as we proceed through the CDO process. The first most helpful spot for anyone to go for the latest information regarding the county development ordinance is the website. That's www.monroecdo.com. On there, you will find on the homepage useful links. So that's going to take you to the latest draft of the CDO. That was included in tonight's packet, but also there have been updates, so we do urge you to continue to check back and see if there are changes. There's going to be a draft zoning map link. So if you click on that link, you'll be able to type in your address and zoom into the property that you're concerned about, or that you can look at it on a larger scale. There's also a CDO feedback survey, so for those of you that don't wish to speak tonight or wish to put your comments in writing, you may fill out that feedback survey for the Plan Commission and ultimately the County Commissioners to review. There's quick tutorials on how to use the CDO, and as well as red line lists of uses comparing the current and the draft CDO, and the analysis of changes in the zoning map. So we're consolidating a large number of zones into very few zones. So if you would like to see on a bigger picture scale what the changes are going to be, that's on the website and it's been updated. And then lastly, we've had a lot of requests for whether people can see each other's comments. So that is updated as of 3 p.m. today. We did make sure all of the public comment that we've received, either email via that feedback survey, or if people have filled out an individual property survey for their zoning, that has all been put online as well. So just a few big changes for the CDO compared to what the current zoning and subdivision control ordinance is doing. So the big changes include combination of the subdivision and zoning ordinance into one document and a new zoning map for the county. It's also consolidating the number of uses to from 372 uses to 174 uses, and it's also going to change the number of zones to about 15. Right now we have 41 or so zones. There's going to be 2 new chapters proposed. They're lighting and Lake Lemon overlay. Those are completely new chapters, and we welcome any feedback on those. And then there's revisions just made throughout in terms of use permissions, definitions, standards, and more. So please do take a look at the latest draft. So I want to just take a minute to go over some of the bigger themes from September 24th, and then I'm going to go into a quick presentation regarding the last theme. So we had a request, some of the large themes that came out, some requests for reviewing the timeline for re-subdividing a parent parcel involved in a sliding scale subdivision. The current and proposed regulation is technically unchanged, but it requires that the designated parent parcel remainder shall not be further subdivided for a period of 25 years from the date of recording of final plat. So that was a reoccurring theme that we heard last time. So if you wish to speak to that, do know that many members have heard many people speak to that before as well. And then there was a zoning map change requests in relation to the number of residential zones in the county. So just at a larger scale, I think there was some requests for more zoning to residential zones. And then lastly, there was a concern about the accessory livestock limitations, which I'd like to explore a little bit further, just to make sure everyone is utilizing the best information based on what the ordinance is proposing to do and where it currently stands. So the biggest differential, so accessory livestock was something that was brought up at the last meeting, and I'm comparing that to another use in the use table, which is agriculture, traditional. So I've posted both definitions online, but the biggest thing I want you to focus on is for accessory livestock, this is for people that want to keep domestic livestock for personal use. If you have a traditional farm or you're utilizing agricultural practices on your property, that is permitted without limitation as long as you're able to follow those definitions. So, if you were to exceed that and you would have to apply to the state for, say, a confined feeding operation, that is a separate use. But as long as you're within the scope of this traditional agriculture definition, which is pretty broad and includes but is not limited to keeping livestock, we are not going to be placing limitations on the number of livestock you can have on your property. I also want to just reiterate that both uses allow for single-family residential uses on the same lot or residential uses on the lot. So if you have accessory livestock, you can have a house on the property. If you are doing traditional agriculture, you can have a house on the property. So I'll just go into what the accessory livestock limitations are for those of you that are still thinking you may fall under accessory livestock because you are keeping those on your property for personal use and not for commercial purposes. The number of large and medium animals regulated based on a pasturage context is currently as drafted, slightly less restrictive. So it's not changing very much, but in the way that it is, it's slightly less restrictive than what it is. And then the number of small animals, such as chickens and beehives, are based on your overall lot size. And again, this standard is in the ordinance already and becoming slightly less restrictive, which I will get into in the next slide. And then there was a question about setbacks. Setbacks are from property lines, so the purpose is to potentially reduce any potential impacts to neighbors, and that standard is not changing. So the question still for everyone in the audience is, are you considered accessory livestock or traditional agriculture? So any of our planners outside can help you if you still feel like you're not sure which one you are, but based on those definitions, it's likely a lot of the people that spoke are traditional agriculture. So what is changing under accessory livestock? Again, the current ordinance allows accessory livestock in 8 out of the 17 residential zones that we have, including all rural residential zones, such as the agricultural zone, forest reserve zone, conservation residential zone. And in the new ordinance, it's included in all 8 of the residential zones. So we're reducing the number of residential zones, but allowing it in every single one of those residential zones. And then just to go into a little bit more detail about what's changing and becoming less strict in the new ordinance, for smaller animals, currently it allows 10 animals per the first acre, 5 animals per acre thereafter. So the current ordinance does not allow accessory livestock if you have less than 0.5 acres. In the new ordinance, it states that smaller animals, including fowl, you can have 5 animals per 0.5 acres, and if your lot size is between 0.25 acres and 0.5 acres, the maximum number of small livestock is 4 and is limited to only hens. So that's the way it's drafted currently. So I want to just give you a visual of what we're thinking these two applications mean. So on the screen here is a typical subdivision. This is located in the county jurisdiction. This is where we envision possibly someone wanting to implement accessory livestock application. The lot I have highlighted, I believe, is about 0.34 acres to give you some context. Now this is a typical visual of what we see in many lots of the county, which is traditional agriculture. There are no permits required to do actual agricultural uses, and this use would follow along with what the ordinance states, which is permitted in each zone without standards. So some of the reasonings for accessory livestock limitations, we're trying to reduce neighbor impacts such as noises or smells, and to offer watershed protection considerations, as well as many other things. And lastly, I just want to state there is a variance process, so if you are too small of a lot, or you just want to have a few extra animals for personal use, you can apply to the Board of Zoning Appeals, and it's about a 30-day, maximum 60-day process, and it only involves one public meeting. So there is a relief valve if you are under accessory livestock. And then lastly, I'll just say also you can make comments on these regulations, so it's still a draft, but I want to make sure that your comments are guided in fact based on accessory livestock, or is it based on traditional agriculture? But again, that CDO feedback survey link is on our website and helpful for those of you that wish to make comments. I'd like to just switch gears and just reiterate for those of you that are new to the room tonight, just want to make sure you're aware of how the testimony will impact the CDO and also the timeline. So there are multiple ways to provide input. If you can, try to be as specific as you can in your comments. So you can make comments tonight at the podium. You can do it online via the CDO feedback survey, or you can email us at planningoffice@co.monroe.in.us. I do ask that everyone that's wanting to speak tonight, we'll make sure we get through everyone, and the Plan Commission is here to listen to you. And if you are not going to speak tonight, please get your survey or your emails out to us as soon as possible, because at some point we need to start compiling these comments and actually coming up with recommendations for the Plan Commission. So we will need to have some cutoff date by which the public comment will then go to the commissioners for their review. But at some point, the Plan Commission will need kind of an end date to take that feedback. So the timeline for CDO adoption, tonight we have a continued hearing. If we need to continue again, we will make an announcement at the end of the meeting to which date that will be scheduled. The next step after tonight's meeting, if not continued, would be a Plan Commission administrative meeting where the Planning Department staff would compile all of the comments that we've received to date and put that into kind of a master spreadsheet for the Plan Commission to review. And we will have suggestions based on your testimony, based on your feedback, if specific enough. We will be able to help translate where at in the CDO you're asking for some sort of edit or change. And then the Plan Commission will direct staff, yes, make that change, or no, we would not like you to make that change. Once we get all of those decisions made, then staff and our consultant who helped us with the ordinance can help make a new version of the CDO. That will need to go to another regular hearing of the Plan Commission. And at that point, the Plan Commission could be making a recommendation to the county commissioners. This is ultimately a decision by the Board of Commissioners, and we do anticipate it going to both a work session and a formal session. Based on the fact that we don't exactly know how much testimony we're going to hear, what the public feedback will be, I've left the dates open. But if you would like to stay on our email listserv to get updates on when the next meetings will be, that's also on the CDO website under public input. And that's the tab right there. So if you press public input and you put your name and email and you want to be added to the email list, we'll make sure that we keep you updated with all of those dates as they are made available. I think that's all that I have.
Okay, thank you, Jackie. And for the record, I want to state that Commissioner Thomas joined right before you began presenting, and we've also got Plan Commission member Jerry Pittsford online. So I wanted to make that announcement. So before we start taking public comment, I'd like to go over some shared understandings for tonight. So as Jackie has mentioned, this is a continuation of our public hearing for the CDO. We, the Plan Commission members, are here tonight to listen to everyone's testimony, but we will not be discussing comments tonight amongst ourselves or with speakers. All comments tonight will be added to the public record for future Plan Commission discussion, as Jackie just mentioned. If anyone has questions, we have planners available outside the room, and I would encourage everyone to ask questions of planners before speaking if you need additional clarification or have questions on a topic. You're welcome to come and go from the room, and there's a helpful handout for each person that describes timeline and next steps after tonight's hearing. There are copies available in the back of the room or in the rotunda. If a Plan Commission member would like to ask a speaker a clarifying question, they may raise their hand after the speaker has finished, and I will call on them. Plan commissioners that are online should raise their hand and raise their virtual hand, and planning staff will help assist. Note that if a speaker mentions something that is not factual to the ordinance, staff will be encouraged to clarify after the 3 minutes have been utilized. This is not to encourage a back and forth conversation, but rather to ensure the public leaves with accurate information. Each speaker will get 3 minutes. This meeting is a continuation of last Tuesday's meeting, and our rules of procedure state that a person may only speak once during a meeting. Therefore, if you spoke last time, you will not be permitted to speak again tonight. However, you may still contact planning staff or submit feedback on MonroeCDO.com. And per our rules of procedure, we kindly ask that you try not to repeat yourself or keep comments that have already been made by other speakers concise. There will be a countdown clock displayed on the TVs on either side of the room or in Teams for virtual attendees. In the interest of fairness, I'll be cutting everyone off at the 3-minute mark. I will take one person from in the room followed by one virtual person, so we'll alternate back and forth. For virtual attendees, once your name is called, your permissions will be elevated and you'll likely need to unmute your microphone to speak. We'll give you about 15 seconds to announce your name and try to speak, and if we can't hear you within 15 seconds, we'll move on to the next person online and try again later. For people here in person that wish to speak, please line up on the wooden bench in the front of the room. And you'll be called up in order to the podium. For virtual attendees, the chat has been disabled because it cannot be part of public record. If you want to make written comment, go to MonroeCDO.com and fill out the online CDO feedback survey. This is a public hearing, and so the record is anything spoken out loud or physical documents put into the record. Each speaker will be asked to state their name or sign in if you're here in the room, and sign in if you're here in the room. We will also ask if you're a county resident or live inside city or outside town limits, or whether you live, work, or recreate in the county. I may ask you to spell your last name, as Plan Commission members may be taking notes to discuss later with the planning staff. You'll also be asked to state whether or not you're a resident of Monroe County. In addition, it will ask if you spoke at last Tuesday's meeting. As I've already mentioned, if you've already spoken, we'll ask you to submit feedback on monroecdo.com or by contacting the planning department rather than speaking for a second time. So, per our rules of procedure, if the meeting is still going on at 9 p.m. tonight, we'll need to vote and receive a majority approval by the Plan Commission in order to continue the meeting past 9 p.m. If we don't receive a majority approval to proceed tonight, the meeting will be continued to another night here in this room and online. So before we start public comment, I would just like to remind everyone that we're all here to listen. There will be opinions shared tonight that we don't all agree with, and that's okay. I just ask that we all remain respectful of one another, whether we agree or not with an opinion that has been shared. We are all here because we care about Monroe County and our county's future. So at this point, we can open this up for public comment. So, sir, sitting at the end of the bench, if you'd like to come forward, sign in, state your name, whether you live, work, or recreate in the county, and tell us whether or not you spoke at last Tuesday's meeting.
I did not speak at last week's meeting. I'm a property owner, worker, resident, and recreator in the county. My name is Adam Casey. I'm actually here representing the Lake Lemon Conservancy District. I'm the district manager out there. So I really wanted to kind of talk about the Conservancy District, since this really impacts us with environmental overlay. The Conservancy District was codified and created by the Monroe County Circuit Court in 1995 under Indiana Code 14-33. We're a governmental unit, we're a taxing unit, or a special district with authorities granted by the state. Within the Conservancy District, for the Monroe County portion, our assessed property values are $143 million currently for the 2024 year budget, and they're expecting that to go up next year according to Department of Local Government Finance. So a lot of this has been able to be accomplished through the actions of the district. Through our operations, we've dredged approximately 420,000 yards of material, reclaimed well over 80 acres. Over 300,000 yards of material were taken out of the floodplain and placed into our general construction permit sites with all those rules. We also do shoreline stabilization on the taxpayer dimes at Lake Lemon and recreational users. We have stabilized over 3 miles of shoreline utilizing riprap and other means. For most of the Lake Lemon overlay, I really agree with this. I actually encourage the permitting and the oversight for the general public. I do have concerns with the language as presented pertaining to the Conservancy District by itself, particularly in the Lake Lemon overlay and then in the flood damage prevention. In the Chapter 824 Lake Lemon overlay, it states the purpose is to protect and enhance public health as well as enhance resource and recreational. That's in lockstep with our mission at the Conservancy Districts. However, within that 50-foot setback distance for sensitive lands, states no erosion control, mitigation activities can be carried out on the lake shore, and then restoration mitigation activities cannot be done to reduce erosion and improve water quality without permission from appropriate agencies. According to the state code, I believe we have permission and we are one of the appropriate agencies. Having worked with some of the staff in the county, and we do have ongoing conversations, is that our future efforts for dredging, riprapping, any type of shoreline would have to go through additional permitting from the county. So again, in 2023, the state actually authorized Indiana Code 14-33-24-10. This gives authorized actions to reservoir conservancy districts, specifically with catch basins, stream bank remediation, dredging throughout primary water recreation facilities. So a lot of the activities which are explicitly listed here in the overlay and the flood damage prevention. And then in the flood damage as well.
And I'm sorry to cut you off, but your 3 minutes are up. So thank you for speaking tonight.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. And if you're online and wish to speak, please go ahead and raise your virtual hands, and it will number you in the order in which you've raised your hands. Okay, so we've got Chad Hawkins up first. If you could be unmuted by Tech Services, and then you should be able to speak.
Good evening. Can everyone hear me okay?
Good evening.
Hi, good evening. My name's Chad Hawkins, and I'm here representing Smithville Communications. I'm originally from Monroe County. I currently live and work in Monroe County, and I have for the last 20 years. I'm the lead outside plant engineer for Smithville, which means that one of my primary responsibilities is putting together construction plans for deployment of new infrastructure, which is mainly fiber these days. Just to extend our broadband service to our customers that are still stuck on our legacy DSL technology. Smithville's been consistently deploying new fiber optic infrastructure throughout our service area. It's a large project and it's very expensive. We've been building fiber out to every single home as we continue upgrading our infrastructure, and it costs roughly $20 a foot to build new fiber optic cable. And Smithville invests quite a lot of money in this every year. We look for every opportunity to keep our costs low so we can fund as much new fiber as possible every year. A couple of the proposals in the CDO were concerning because they could increase our costs to deploy new fiber optic lines, and an increase in cost could reduce the amount of fiber we can deploy over a year. Things like increased setback distances or putting structures further from the roadway where most of the utility mains are located will increase the cost to place service lines to those structures. The restriction, including utility construction, in the restriction of slope greater than 12%, I think this is the Lake Monroe overlay, they could also increase cost to place infrastructure to structures. Most utility companies, not just Smithville, will take the shortest route possible to reach a structure in order to keep our costs low. While a driveway might need to be hundreds or even thousands of feet long to maintain navigable grade, utility companies can often just reach a home with a fraction of that construction distance because we don't necessarily have to worry about snaking along a driveway. Sometimes we can just go up the side of a hill. And burying utility lines generally doesn't have nearly the impact to the environment as something like leveling grade for a structure or clearing a swath for a driveway. Many of the construction methods we use today have very little soil disturbance. In addition to the hindrance of our ability to use shortest route possible to a structure, the restriction reads like it could possibly impact our ability to deploy fiber optic cables along county roads with greater than 12% slope in areas where we still have the copper lines. We want to build as much fiber as we can because we know Monroe County needs it and wants it. But any increase in our construction cost has the potential to reduce the amount of fiber we can deploy in a given period.
And I'm sorry to cut you off, Mr. Hawkins, but your time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you for speaking
Thank you very
tonight.
much.
We appreciate it. Okay, we'll turn now to our next in-person guest. If you could sign in, state your name and whether you live, work, or recreate in the county, and then state whether or not you spoke in our last meeting.
Shane Gibson. I live in Monroe County, property owner. I did not speak at the last meeting. Broker owner, Sweet Maple Realty. Also a former environmental education director of Bradford Woods and Sycamore Land Trust, a former native plant restoration tech with Ecologic, a Monroe County-based business, a lifelong hunter and fisherman. I am a conservationist and an educator that happens to be a realtor. I grew up connected to the land, immersed in nature. This led to careers, hobbies, and a way of life that's a part of my core, values that I've instilled in my boys and shared with my wife and thousands of children across the state. Those that protect the land are usually those that love the land, that have the most to lose, that have given the most sweat and tears and resources to nurture, preserve, and utilize the land. At Unionville Elementary, second graders and I planted 100 oaks on their property, removed invasive species, landscaped with native plants, studied watersheds and water quality. These students had the dirt under their nails, scratches from the multiflora rose, wet feet from the pond. I always said the most important thing about planting 100 oaks with second graders was not that the oaks survive, but that these young people know how to plant trees. These kids are connected to the land. Their families are connected to the land. They love where they live. I believe people like this know more about the importance of the land and what's best for the land than a person at the town square who rarely leaves the concrete. My own son is 22 and a senior at IU. This week he said, "Dad, I want to buy land and build. We've been gardening a ton the last 2 years on 5 acres. He envisions his own place, his own homestead. I hope he can afford to do it in Monroe County." This brings me to Section 816, landscaping. I spoke with a private resident and a business owner, both that live and operate in Monroe County. They both spoke on the experience with the landscape requirements. One was threatened with the $50,000 fine on personal property. The business owner shared in detail what I thought as a conservationist to be extreme requirements. I was on site to see the buffer that really only benefited the owner from road noise and privacy, no ecological significance, but costly. Landscaping doesn't and shouldn't be an extra burden, but so here are some changes that could alleviate expenses and regulations. Flexible buffer requirements on a site-by-site basis. Incentives for compliance. Get buy-in from the landowners with financial incentives instead of a financial burden. Offer offsets, much like an I-69 mitigation site. Allow a landowner to improve habitat plantings on their land or other adjacent properties. And broaden the species list for flexibility in both species availability and cost.
Thank you, sir. We will turn now to our next online guest, Janet Conder. If you could unmute your microphone, state your name, whether you live, work, or recreate in the county, and whether or not you spoke at the last meeting.
This is Janet and Dallas Conder. We're lifelong residents of Monroe County and live outside the city and the country. We did not speak at the first meeting. Dallas is a 4th generation farmer, and we've raised the 5th generation on our farm, and the 6th generation is learning and growing up on the same farm. We would like to support the amount of acreage to be divided for sale to building a home brought down to 5 acres or even below. We would like to see the stipulation of having to wait 25 years to subdivide land again to end. The way it is now, I would have to give more land than my child wants to be able to build a home and stay on the farmland that they grew up on than they want. And my grandchildren will have to wait 25 years to be able to have a small piece of land to build on that generational farm. That's not fair to them. Our family has worked hard over the many years to keep agriculture alive. You will not find a better steward of the land than a farmer. Dallas is a senior supervisor of the Monroe County Soil and Water, has been on the board for almost 20 years. Soil erosion is important to us and the community. Monroe County is no longer known as an agricultural county. The state conventions that he has attended refer Monroe County as a rural county. There is so much land wasted because of rules and stipulations that have been made in the past few years. Making a young person buy more than an acre to build their dream home is a waste of farmland. If you make them buy excess land, what are they going to do with it? It's not fair to make a young person, maybe fresh out of college, to buy a large quantity of land to put a home on. They can't afford it. We are totally in favor of affordable housing. Even the majority of your local farmers have supplemental income, such as their wives may have an outside job, like myself. Farming is expensive, and farmers don't waste the land they are responsible for. We are good stewards of the land. We raise cattle on our farm and take wonderful care of our cattle. It doesn't seem fair that our property taxes continue to increase, and the stipulations of what we can do with our land also continues to increase. We ask that before making any final decisions, please reach out to the local Soil and Water Board, Farm Bureau Incorporated, the Board of Realtors, and Purdue. They are the real experts here. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments tonight. We'll come back to our next in-person guest. If our next in-person guest would like to come to the podium, sign in, state your name, whether you live, work, or recreate in the county, and then whether or not you spoke at last week's meeting.
My name's Louis Calley. My wife Anne Marie and I have lived here for 38 years, and we've lived in our current house at 5745 Union Valley Road for 28 years. And I did not speak at the last meeting. First of all, I'd like to express thanks for the section of the comprehensive plan covering the area of Union Valley Road. Once past Tanglewood, this is clearly rural and historic. Our house dates from 1899, and a cabin near us predates that. Except for 2 new residents, most residents have been there over 28 years, including us. Several have grown up there and have been there for 50 to 60 years. But the land clearly changes after Tanglewood. Current acreage is 2.5 acres for housing. I have 4.6 acres, and we had planned to move my sister-in-law here, but I needed 5 acres to build an ADU. So I'd planned to seek a variance, which I thought I had a reasonable argument for, but the adjacent property became available, which we bought. And I understand you need to set restrictions on the land, if I wasn't able to get that, that would have just been the case, but I would have worked through the restrictions, and I agree with most of them that you have. The current designation of our land and the 40 acres just north of Tanglewood, which is the area that we're most interested in, is Agricultural Rural Reserve. Both areas have been changed in the new zoning proposal to agricultural residential, an appropriate tweak that fits with the mild changes in land use. It appropriately recognizes this area as rural and historic, and the zoning remains at 2.5 acres per unit. You have many interests to deal with, but you've recognized that continued expansion needs some boundaries, and that people, history, and the land itself have rights and hopes. 3 of these plats are being cleared and undergoing extensive tree planting, creating pollinator habitat, and rejuvenating neglected forests by clearing out dying ash and opening areas for poplar, oaks, and maple. The land is being improved and restored to its natural state. It's being respected. If developers decided to come into that 40 acres and create 2.5 acre plots, that could be done with care and respect and preserving the land character. But changing that proposed zoning, which I know is going to be asked for, would not and would necessitate widening of Union Valley Road eventually, which would be not advisable given the speed of the traffic and the flow of the traffic there now, which has pretty much precluded bicycle riding on that area. You have a lot of interest to deal with, but you've recognized, I think I already said that. Thank you, and I know you have to deal with real problems of affordable housing, but I applaud you also recognizing there is a land ethic as well as historical precedents. Thank you, and hang in there with an often thankless but very important job.
Thank you for your comments. And before we continue, I want to ask Tech Services if we could hold off on starting the timer until the speaker has gone through the questions that we've asked. I think there was about 20 seconds used up on the last conversation before the speaker started, so I just want to make sure we're being fair to everybody, so I gave him a little bit extra time. So we will turn now to our next virtual guest, Brian Booz. If you could unmute and state your name and whether you live, work, or recreate in the county, and then whether or not you spoke in the last meeting. Brian Booz, are you able to unmute to speak? Okay, we will go now to our next in-person guest, and we'll try to come back to Brian after our next in-person guest. So if you could sign in, state your name, state whether you live, work, or recreate in the county, and whether or not you spoke in the last meeting.
My name is Mitzi Lewis. I am a longtime Bloomington resident, 50 years, and I'm here tonight not for my living in the city, but some land I own north of town. So I own 31 acres of wooded land off Earl Young Road. It's on the north side of town. The proposed zoning is 2.5 AGR and would be considered a sliding scale subdivision if I wanted to build on it, which I personally don't, but I'm not planning on doing that, but for my family. The CDO would require 55% of the 31 acres, which is 17 acres, to be set aside as a parent parcel with 3 lots allowed on the remaining 14 acres. So the minimum lot size is 2.5 acres. The 3 allowed lots might be, for example, 4 acres, 5 acres, and 5 acres, or maybe 3 acres, 5 acres, and 6 acres, or some combination of that adding up to 14 acres. This totally prevents me from, like for instance, dividing the 31 acres into maybe 3 10-acre parcels, which I always thought was kind of maybe would have been a good thing. But regardless, if one of my children decided they wanted to build on this, it would require the expense of a surveyor for me to not only survey out the first lot, but also survey out the second and third lots, and also the parent parcel at that time. This parent parcel's use would then be frozen for the 25 years, meaning I understand it to mean no changes would be allowed for 25 years. That's a very long time. I will be gone by then. I would have to make the decision for the size and location of the second and third lot owners at the time the first lot owner chooses the first lot, and to decide which 17 acres would become the parent parcel. I'd prefer not to choose their building sites for them, and I'm talking about maybe possibly my family, my children or grandchildren, but I'd rather have them choose just where they'd like to build on this land. Also, the surveying costs would then be my burden at the time the first lot is decided on, not down the road when maybe who knows how long they choose something. I believe the moratorium or the 25-year land lock creates unnecessary complications. It would add undue expense for surveying and recording, and it reduces my options for the use of the land. And I think this is a violation of my property owner rights. George and I worked hard for this, to pay for this land, and I think the CDO is limiting the buildable potential of my 31 acres to just 3 lots, which definitely reduces the value of my land. Why not simplify the CDO plan to not require a parent parcel with all its restrictions and expense, but rather allow at most maybe 6 buildable lots?
And I'm sorry to cut you off, but your 3 minutes are up. So thank you for speaking tonight.
Sure.
We will turn back now to Brian Booz online. If you're able to unmute and speak, you'll have 3 minutes. Okay, I'm not seeing Mr. Booz unmuting, so we'll go to our next in-person guest. If you'd like to come forward, state your name, sign in, whether you live, work, or recreate in the county, and whether or not you spoke at last week's meeting. You'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Miranda Terry. I live and work here in Monroe County. I did not speak at last week's meeting. I'm not much of a public speaker, so bear with me, but I was encouraged to come and share today. So I am here to speak to the affordable housing, particularly for young, working-class families transitioning out of rental living. I have been living and working here in Monroe County for over 8 years. I currently work at IU Credit Union. My partner works with the local construction and property management group. A little over a year ago, we started looking for a home to purchase. Unfortunately, Monroe County was not a viable option for us when it came time. Despite working here, spending our money here, and giving back to this community, we were forced to look outside the county. Homes within our price range and the range of many other working young families were either completely unfindable or not able to meet our needs. such as rooms, yard size, overall living conditions. We now actually live on the Greene County line, not because we wanted to leave, but it was the only affordable, close option to work. And literally, the county line is about as close as you can get. The proposed zoning rules would and do limit opportunities for people like me, and it's not just my story. Within the past 2 years, 4 couples that are close friends of mine who had previously rented in Monroe County ended up purchasing their first home in a neighboring county. They had to look elsewhere for affordability, just like many others will continue to do if these zoning restrictions remain. When families and workers like us choose not to live in Monroe County or are, essentially forced not to live here, you lose your valuable tax dollars and revenue that would otherwise support local businesses and services here. Those dollars begin to go to neighboring counties where we now live and begin to spend our money. We need a developmental ordinance that fosters affordability, not one that forces people out. I urge you to consider everyone's comments here and going forward and from the past meeting and the current zoning rules in the CDO draft. Monroe County should be a place where everyone has the opportunity to work, live, and thrive. And I thank you all for your time.
Thank you for coming out to speak tonight. So we'll turn back now to our online commenters. Brian Booz, if you're able to unmute, you'll have 3 minutes. If you could state your name, whether you live, work, or recreate in the county, and then whether or not you spoke at last week's meeting.
Okay, third try. Can you hear me now?
You can't. Yes, we can.
Okay, third time's a charm. I apologize for the inconvenience I caused there. Switched over to a different computer. My name is Brian Booz. I'm a resident of Monroe County, live and work here. Been here for many, many years. I did not speak at the previous meeting. I've addressed this group several times before relative to the Wormsway property out on the north side of town. I live in Windsor Private, in the neighboring neighborhood. We've gone through over the last 3 or 4 years, several different sessions on the rezoning and changes to that property. And I think everybody in the room, whether it was this particular group or actually the county commissioners at different levels, I mean, there have been use variances, rezones, PUD designations, and all that put forth. And one by one, they were rejected for all the various reasons that I'm sure this group and everybody's familiar with. So now when we go to the CDO, I see that neighboring property, the Wormsway property, is going to be designated LB limited business. And I guess what I'm asking here, when I look at limited business, there are things in there, if it's, I guess, flexible enough, the designation of limited business, I'm hopeful that we won't get into a situation where certain things that have already been rejected by this same group or the county commissioners, hey, now in limited business would then be, just because of the change in the CDO, would now those same things would be allowed. I'm looking for consistency, I guess, from the county group, that if you've heard the arguments before, we've all spent many evenings in that same room going over things, and one by one things were rejected. I'm just hoping that as that LB designation is applied to that same property now, and the interpretation of it and the content of LB is consistent with the previous rejections of things. I mean, there were general contractors, light industrial, medical manufacturing, different things that for various reasons along the way were rejected for those properties. And I'm just asking that as this CDO process goes forward, that this group tries to stay consistent. If we heard all the arguments, went through the process, rejected it before, that we make sure this LB designation that's applied to that property is consistent with those previous decisions. So we're not just reinventing the wheel here via yet a fourth path on this same property. That was what I wanted to convey. I want to thank everybody for your time on this, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. If there's anyone else online who wishes to speak, please go ahead and raise your virtual hand, and we'll continue to alternate back and forth. But in the meantime, we'll turn to our next in-person guest. If you'd like to come to the podium, sign in, state your name, whether you live, work, or recreate in the county, and then whether or not you spoke at last week's meeting.
My name is Raylan Cook, and I live and work in Monroe County. I moved to Bloomington with my family. I also did not speak the last meeting, sorry. In 2018. Prior to moving to Bloomington, I lived in 2 different towns, both with major universities, one in Missouri and one in Ohio. The price to live in decent housing in Bloomington for a family was exceptionally high. In 2019, we bought a home in Adams Hill Farm for $248,000. This year we divorced and sold for $410,000. Now that I'm single, I am choosing to rent because the cost of buying a home in Monroe County is significantly higher than my monthly rental cost for a similar type of home. Bloomington is to live, and I would like to raise my voice here. However, it is likely that when I decide to buy a home, I will look outside of Monroe County because it is more affordable. You as elected officials have the ability to make change so that home ownership is not just for the wealthy in our community, but for the working class. My hope is that you review the current CDO to make certain that it is truly going to benefit your constituents. Thank you.
Thank you for coming out to speak tonight. Seeing no virtual hands raised, we will come back now to our next in-person guest. If you could sign in, state your name, whether you live, work, or recreate in the county, and whether or not you spoke at last week's meeting. You'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Lauren Wood. I live, work, and recreate in Monroe County. I did not speak at the last meeting. As I said, I live and work in this county, and I'm speaking today as a concerned landowner, the owner of a business that works in residential construction, and a 2-term board member and longtime partner of the Monroe County Habitat for Humanity. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today, by the way. I'm here to support the recommendations outlined in the white paper, particularly those related to attainable housing and the proposed changes to the CDO. First, I'd like to speak to my concerns for the Habitat for Humanity's mission. As a longtime partner of Habitat for Humanity, I'm deeply concerned about the impact of the CDO on affordable housing. Habitat's mission is to provide homeownership opportunities for families in need, but current zoning restrictions such as larger lot size requirements are driving up land costs and limiting the development of affordable housing. This creates a significant barrier for programs like Habitat, which rely on affordable land to build homes for low-income families. One of the key recommendations in the white paper is the elimination of the 25-year moratorium on sliding scale subdivisions. Removing this restriction would allow more flexibility in how large parcels of land can be redeveloped, enabling smaller and more affordable lots to be created. This change is crucial for organizations like Habitat that need affordable land to serve their mission. Additionally, revising the zoning maps to encourage greater density in areas with existing infrastructure is essential. By allowing higher density housing, we can make more efficient use of the land, lower development costs, and provide more affordable options for families who are currently priced out of the market. Secondly, I'd like to speak to the concerns from my workforce. As the owner of Laurenwood Builders, I also see how the lack of attainable housing affects our local workforce. At my company, 29% of our 71 employees currently live outside of Monroe County. Many would prefer to live closer to their jobs, but the scarcity of affordable housing forces them to commute longer distances. This not only increases their personal costs and environmental impact, but it also makes it harder for us to attract and retain talent, which ultimately weakens our local economy. The white paper emphasizes the need to retain and expand smaller lot sizes for residential use. This is critical for making homeownership accessible for working families and reducing long commutes. Smaller lot sizes would allow for more affordable housing, ensuring that our local workforce can live in the community in which they work. Addressing attainable housing is vital for both the success of programs like Habitat and the stability of our local workforce. Thank you very much. Appreciate y'all.
Thank you. We'll turn now to our next in-person guest. If you'd like to come to the podium, state your first name, last name, whether you live, work, or recreate in the county, and whether or not you spoke at last week's meeting. You'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Doug Hesselman. I live in the county. I'm an active, I'm a farm person in the county. I did not speak at the last meeting. So today I come here as an agricultural advocate, and to this group, I wanted to make sure that you fully understand the opportunities you have to make generational changes. Those changes can have major impacts and or major implications, not only on the agriculture community, but the growth, health, and financials of Monroe County in general. I'd like to refer to Chapter 804 Ag Residential. It's the 2.5 acre with 125 foot of lot frontage. My father's 60 years old, who is a farmer. He wants to give me 2.5 acres so I can build a plot, so I can build a house, engage in the family farming operation, raise my family on the farm. Chapter 831, he goes through the sliding scale process so I can mortgage the land, so I can secure a building loan. Did I mention I had a 14-year-old son? Do you realize that under the proposed scheme, my son would be 39 years old before we could reparcel off a piece of ground so that he could join in the family farming operation? You got to ask yourself, does this make sense? The current scheme is not productive and darn sure not supportive of the principles, in your own words, you intend to promote. In your own words, you intend to promote and support and sustain agriculture, preserve the opportunity for individuals to experience and sustain rural lifestyles. The 25-year moratorium must change. Oh, and by the way, I mentioned my 2.5 acre plot I'm building a house on. Do you realize under these guidance, I have to have 200 foot of road frontage versus what the properties that are being zoned in is only 125. Now, Chapter 811, and this is specifically to Jackie, page 80, the accessory livestock. If I lived inside the city limits on a 30 by 60 plot in the city, I could have 5 hen chickens. You guys all, I'm sure, know what the city rules are. That area is 6 times smaller than what a 0.25 acre plot out in the country is. It makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense to define any common sense in the layout. The current document is 454 pages long. Finding every single hidden agenda item in this is not something everybody can afford time, but I tried to force myself to do it. Now, speaking as an employer, the opportunity I've been recruiting, as an employer, I've been recruiting for upper level positions with the mean salary average above Monroe County. These are positions and families that would positively and financially contribute to the wealth of the county economics. These executive type folks want to buy land in the country, build a house, and raise a family. They're excited to get to Bloomington until they hear and find out about all the stringent controls and overbearing rules and regulations for country living. I have lost employees due to these excessive controls, and I've been unable to hire employees due to these controls. I've had 2 positions open for 3 years for executive types, and they don't want to move here and deal with the restraints.
And I'm sorry to cut you off, but your 3 minutes are up, but we appreciate you coming up to speak tonight. Thank you. Okay, just a reminder, if there's anybody on Teams who wishes to speak, please raise your virtual hand to join the queue. If there's anybody else here in the room, there's a little bit of room on the bench if you'd like to go ahead and come forward and line up if you're wishing to speak. So, sir, we'll turn to our next in-person guest. If you'd like to come forward, state your name, whether you live, work, or recreate in the county, and then whether or not you spoke at last week's meeting. You'll have 3 minutes.
My name's Jeffrey Bailey. I'm a Monroe County career firefighter, 28 years here. I'm a vice president on the Monroe County Farm Bureau Board. I've been a past director of Monroe County Soil and Water, and I work as a life safety inspector on campus. My wife works as a nurse at the hospital. We're very invested in Monroe County. My family's been in agriculture all my life. That was the goal of me and my wife. We got married. She's a city lady, got to learn ag, and has been promoted to farm wife. We bought our place 23 years ago. When we bought our place, it had a deeded acre and the rest was deeded separately. We're encouraged to leave it that way by everybody because the county eventually will go and regulate you. Well, you did it. Now you're proposing my 1 acre piece, the heart of my farm, where my farm shop, my house, the heart of our business, you want to make it a residential 1. The rest of me is ag rural. The trailer park next to me, multiple trailers, junk cars, drugs, and all kinds of activity. I see it daily when I work. You're leaving as ag. How does that work? Well, I got looking. Look at the county parks. You got this one over here, Will Dempner Park over on Vernal Pike. You've got listed as a PUD. You take Flatwood Park, it's listed as ag rural. You look at Cars Park Farm, it's an IP, including the fairgrounds. Using your tables, looking at what you can do on the lands. You now have a whole variety of different things you can and cannot do, including over at the Flatwood Park, you even say it's a research, but ag doesn't allow research. So there's a lot of things. It's amazing how we can have different variants of going on. I even believe Able Nursery is even still listed as an ag, and it's a business. So why are you solely picking my 1 acre piece, the heart of my land, where we want to raise our farm family and making a Rule 1, making changes, is against my ideas. So I want you to just know, I don't have time. I work 2 jobs. We're trying to raise kids. It's difficult to go through all these pages. Just remember, Purdue University is the advocate for agriculture. I would love for their information on what you guys are proposing, because I don't believe they believe in this. We're already fighting federal regulations, trying to get us on all these other rules and waters of the U.S. and all this. Now I got to worry about the county. How does that make you feel as a farmer in the county? It's invested, and we work here every day. So that's all I have. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir. We will turn now. We'll turn now to our next in-person guest. If you'd like to come to the podium, state your name, whether you live, work, or recreate in the county, and then whether or not you spoke at last week's meeting. You'll have 3 minutes.
Yes, good evening, Commission. My name is Joe Fitter. I'm a resident here in Monroe County. I've lived here since 2011. I'm a bloomerang, which means I lived here before also when I was much younger. I'm a father. I have 2 boys, 2 men, ages 27 and 24, and they'd like to live here in Monroe County. I did not speak at the last meeting, by the way. So I approach this from 2 perspectives. The first perspective is as a father, wanting my children to grow up in the community that I've grown up in, wanting them to be able to live near me and my wife as we age. We're fortunately young now, and they fortunately want to live near us. Hopefully, over time, they'll be able to live near us as we age. Unfortunately, I live on 8.75 acres in the east end of the county and not able to subdivide that land to provide them with space to each build a home. The CDO restricts that, and unfortunately, therefore, restricts a family goal of ours. But more importantly, I speak about less privileged folks in the county. I'm a professor at Indiana University, and the university would never exist if it weren't for middle-class workers who are coming to work every day, maintaining our facilities, running the organizations, and ensuring that all of our lives go on normally. They can't do that because housing is unaffordable in Monroe County. The CDO, as it stands now, underutilizes available land space. We need to see if we can modify that. We need to be able to have access to small parcels of land, be able to subdivide those parcels of land, and be able to create some kind of an ability for housing, a low cost in nature, to allow them to also live in the county rather than commuting 45 minutes to an hour every day each way. Many of those folks have children, and that means that those children are unattended for hours during the day while their parents are trying to commute from a lower cost county into Monroe County. So I implore you to consider the CDO as it's currently being proposed and an ability to change that CDO such that land can be subdivided in parcels more adequate for affordable housing. I'm on the board of directors, and I proudly have been for the last 6 years for Habitat for Humanity. We house many of those kind of individuals in affordable housing. We've built 2 subdivisions in Monroe County, and that has truly changed the lives not only of those individuals, but of everyone in the county that those individuals work with or support. And I would encourage you all to consider the ability to change the CDO as proposed so that we can increase the density of lower cost housing, allow for opportunities to subdivide parcels of land that are perhaps orphaned, and create the ability to have low-cost housing for those individuals. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate you speaking tonight. Before we continue, I just want to announce to the people that are on the first floor that we have space opening up here in the 3rd floor room. So if you're wanting to come up and speak, but you're in the lobby, please feel free to start making your way upstairs. We do have several open seats available. So we will now turn to our next in-person guest. If you could state your name, whether you live, work, or recreate in the county, and then whether or not you spoke in last week's meeting, you'll have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Alicia England. I currently work and live in Monroe County, and I did not speak on Tuesday's meeting. I am here today on my 2-year wedding anniversary to advocate for a revised CDO plan to ensure a bright future for my child that is sitting back there and for the community that we love. I'm here to share how this CDO will directly impact my family right now. For the past year, my husband and I have been working towards purchasing 35 acres of his grandparents' land in northern Monroe County. Our goal is to build our forever home there, raise our children, the 4th generation to grow up on Fry Road. We also hope to use a portion of this land as pasture to instill our children with the value of raising animals, not only for 4-H, but for a sustainable life. However, upon reading the current CDO draft, we have paused our pursuit to purchase the land because we are unsure we will be able to develop the land as we want. While a handful of the proposed rules concerned us, the one that truly stopped us in its tracks was the flooding zone. Restrictions like this, with less of an acre of our land being considered a flood zone, will deem our land potentially unbuildable if we're unable to get a variance and proper permitting given by you guys. This makes it impossible to predict or budget for our dream of living on a land that's been in our generations for been in our family for 3 generations now. It shouldn't be this hard for people to want to live here and raise the next generation here. Restrictions like this will limit the availability to build land, drive prices up, and making it even harder for Monroe County to find, for those others in Monroe County to find affordable housing. I have friends who are currently teaching the youth of Monroe County who are unable to find affordable housing. One is currently stuck living with her parents while the other is stuck renting because a house with a yard for her dog is unaffordable. While these two still have hope to find a house here in Monroe County, we have given up hope if this CDO passes as currently is stated. We will be forced to move out of Monroe County in order to build the life that we want for our children. The impact of this document goes far beyond today. It will have lasting consequences, making it harder for future generations to live, work, and thrive in Monroe County. I urge you to carefully consider the long-term effects before moving forward with this document. Thank you.
Thank you for speaking tonight. Okay, just a reminder, if there's anybody online who wishes to speak, go ahead and raise your virtual hand. We'll go ahead and turn now to our next in-person guest. If you could come to the podium, state your name, whether you live, work, or recreate in the county, and whether or not you spoke at last week's meeting. You'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Bradley Rushton. I was not here to speak last time. I am a resident of Monroe County. I do not live in the city, and I do work in the city. I am not an orator, nor am I a very gracious speaker. And if I ruffle a few feathers, my apologies ahead of time. But my statement is not necessarily for the county commissioners. It's for my constituents, my fellow Americans. These are your employees. And with that, I would like to refer to somebody who is a much greater orator than I. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter and or to abolish it and institute new government. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing invariably the same object evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and provide new guards for their future security. I know election time's coming up this November, and for the majority of you that will take the opportunity to listen to your constituency, I wish you well. But as far as I'm concerned, folks, these employees of yours aren't listening to you. I understand your concerns. I feel your pain. My mother and father bought our property in the early 70s. They passed away on that property, so as far as I'm concerned, that property was paid for by blood. My taxes have tripled. For what? I don't understand why. There's no point in it. Here's the part where I become indignant. To my fellow citizens, I'm a patriot. I believe in this country. I believe in the United States. I believe in Monroe County. And there is a lot of good people in this county. But you are encroaching ever increasingly on their rights. You are becoming control freaks. Stop. There's no reason for it. Consult with your constituency and come up with a better plan. I feel for these people that have no opportunity to purchase a house because the prices are so damn high. There's no reason for it. And folks, I want to say one thing to you all. There should be a disclaimer for whenever the county council meets. It should say, possible lower abdominal discomfort with side effect of anal leakage. Have a nice evening, folks.
Thank you, sir, for coming up to speak tonight. We appreciate it. We could turn now to our next in-person guest. If you could come forward, sign in, state your name, whether you live, work, or recreate in the county, and then whether or not you spoke at last week's meeting. You'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Rod Young. I do live here. I grew up here. I was at the last meeting, didn't get a chance to speak, but that's how it goes. I came back because it's important. I'm a former county councilman. Thank you, Cheryl. I'm a former member of the County Plan Commission. Thank you, people, for being here. My father, Howard, my sister, Nancy, and I have all served on the Bloomington City Council. I've served on the City Plan Commission. I chaired through the city exactly what you guys are doing, and it is difficult. I'm here on behalf of my grandchildren. I've been very fortunate to make a living here. Things have been very, very good for me and for my family, but I'm concerned about what my grandkids are going to do. Are they going to have some place to work that's worthwhile? They're smart kids. They're good kids, except one of the boys. He's a little lame. Yeah, anywho, but we need places for our kids to work. We need places for the new people that are coming in. Our population is shifting. We're becoming, oh gosh, old, and we don't have as many younger people replacing us. According to Savannah Guthrie on the Today Show, I am elderly, and I do not care for the word, but that's just the way it works. We have to supply housing and help people have places to live. Home is a very big investment, generally the largest investment most people will ever make. Where are these people going to live? Well, we need to develop the fringes of the city. That's where we've always been able to expand. I put in the sewer, I put in the roads, I put in everything in there to sell a lot or hopefully make a bit of a profit on it, which is never guaranteed. And we have housing. That's how we ended up with Cedar Chase that has quite a bit of housing in it for Habitat Humanity. I was involved with that. That's how we ended up with Hyde Park. I was involved with that. My name's on the wall. Isn't that nice? Not that big a deal, but we were good at what we did. There's roads in there that have been there since 1988. They're still there. They haven't been paved over because we did it right. And these things are then given to the government to take care of, but it's the kids. Where are they going to live? How are they going to be able to afford a house in this community. I think that's very important and would appreciate it if you and the commissioners would think about this. And I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Young, for coming out to speak tonight. Okay, our next in-person guest, if you could sign in, state your name, whether you live, work, or recreate in the county, and whether or not you spoke at last week's meeting. You'll have 3 minutes.
County Commissioners, esteemed members of the Plan Commission, my name is Peter Iverson. I live, work, and recreate in this beautiful county, Monroe County, and I did not speak last week. Let me get my notes here. The current CDO document before us is a feat of tremendous work by Jackie Nestor-Jelen and her team. In particular, I want to recognize the work of Tammy Bierman, who has implemented many favorable improvements in the 7 drafts of this document. I'm going to talk about those improvements, and then I'll address the areas that I believe are still missing and conclude with the poison pill. The improvements in this document are key to the growth of our community. The following areas are worthy of highlight: flood damage prevention in Section 825, accessory solar panels built throughout, solar farm in 805 and 807, electric vehicle charging stations in 814.4B, a lot of work went into that, wireless communication facilities in 811.4, and the airport overlay in 821. The last section that has seen significant improvement is the adult-oriented businesses in 812.1. Sections that referenced binary gender and sexuality have gone, but there's more work to be done, and legal language clarifying the section make it much better. But there are key aspects of our built society that are missing from this document. I-69, for example, is mentioned only once in the context where the Indiana University Comprehensive Plan, the BEDC, the Chamber of Commerce, and other groups tout this importance. It is a glaring omission. I have been vocal about seeking an I-69 overlay to recognize the immense opportunity and threats this corridor can and will bring to our community. Another area is heat damage prevention. The draft Monroe County Climate Resilience Plan highlights the dangers to our community of both flood and high heat. Section 835 covers flood damage prevention, but a similar section on heat damage prevention is needed because, quite frankly, heat kills. Lastly, more work needs to be done on transportation modalities. Pedestrian zones are protected throughout, but more work could be done. Bicycles are mentioned only twice in 816.4 and 832.8, and more attention needs here as we're seeing more recreational trails and a new park in the county. Also, buses are referenced only once in 850. The landscape of public transportation is changing within Monroe County, and this should be addressed. Let me conclude with the poison pill, which is sewer politics. In residential sections 810 and 812 and others, this is dependent on the availability of sewer. But meanwhile, a growing chorus of experts are arguing that the way out of the housing crisis is to build more supply. This poison pill of sewer politics allows those pushing stagnation to avoid building any new housing by fanning the flames of sewer expansion and annexation. This plan is infected, but unfortunately, those hurt the most are the taxpayers wanting to live here, but are unable to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for coming out to speak tonight. If there's anybody else in the room who would like to line up to speak, we've got room on the wooden bench up in front. You're welcome to come up and continue the line. And we'll turn now to our next in-person speaker. If you could state your name, whether you live, work, or recreate in the county, and whether or not you spoke at last week's meeting, you'll have 3 minutes.
Yes. Hello, and thank you for letting us speak again tonight. My name is Emily Avers. I live, work, and recreate in Monroe County. I did not speak last week. I grew up in the country in Monroe County. My husband grew up in the country in Monroe County. Both of us have had family living in Monroe County for generations. My family has been in the county since 1865. You've heard a lot last week and tonight about the lack of affordable housing in Monroe County and how young working people are moving outside the county because there is no housing they can afford within the county limits. Until recently, my husband and I were part of that demographic. We are both working professionals. We make a decent income, but we could not afford to buy property in Monroe County. We were privileged to be able to return after a death in his family gave us access to affordable property. This was truly a privilege because of the hard work of his grandparents and great-grandparents on their farm of over 100 years, but it's not a sustainable path to housing affordability for most people. Like many farming families, his family has split parcels from the farm to keep the land in the family. Removing the 25-year requirement would allow these rural families who are deeply committed to their land to keep the properties in their families. Designating more properties as residential, especially around the large arterial roads that cross the county, would allow additional development in a more sustainable pattern than the requirement of large plats of land. We have additional requirements and restrictions to manage environmental concerns, including the grade of the property, watersheds, and cars features that make up so much of the county. Let's not add additional burdens on top of these environmental considerations wherever it makes sense to do so. Updating the CDO gives you the opportunity to address an existing problem. Instead, it seems you're doubling down on the same restrictions that put us in this situation in the first place. Please take seriously this chance to make Monroe County accessible to the people who are already here, as well as to the people who would like to be here. Look at the reasons working people are moving out of the county and taking their income tax dollars to other counties, and consider the ways the new CDO could better reflect the ways the county has been developed since the Monroe County Comprehensive Plan was developed over a decade ago, so we can continue to grow our county sustainably. We need to retain and attract working people and families and businesses so Monroe County can continue to provide the wonderful quality of life we all want to protect. Thank you.
Thank you for coming out to speak tonight. As a reminder, if you're online and wish to speak, please go ahead and raise your virtual hand and you'll be added to the queue. If you're downstairs on the first floor of the courthouse, we do have room available if you'd like to come upstairs. So now we will turn to our next in-person speaker. If you'd like to come forward, sign in, state your name, state whether you live, work, or recreate in the county, and then whether or not you spoke at last week's meeting.
Hi, my name's Andy Walker. I do live and work in Monroe County, and I did not speak at the last meeting. I'm here to speak as a proponent for the current zoning in the new CDO for the location at 4691 Victor Pike, which is community development, which is basically just medium density, about 4 units an acre. What I'd like to point out is that every iteration of the CDO over the last 5 years has earmarked this property for some variation of medium density, including the current CDO draft. Multiple consultants and our planning staff have worked on this plan and come to the same conclusion. This is a parcel that should be and needs to be medium density zoning. One of the reasons for that, and probably the biggest reason, is there's sewers available there. Where we have infrastructure, we need to be able to develop and build houses. And as an added bonus, this parcel, the owner of the parcel also has a will serve letter from the city of Bloomington for sewer service, which is no small feat these days. And I think one of the other reasons that this parcel is constantly seen as a parcel that should be some variation of medium density is that the fact that there's 3 schools, a city bus stop, commercial development, and a public library within a mile of it. How this parcel could be considered rural, I really don't know. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Okay, we can turn to our next in-person guest. If you'd like to come to the podium, sign in, state your name, whether you live, work, or recreate in the county, you'll have 3 minutes, and also state whether you spoke at last week's meeting or not.
My name's Kerry Dishman. I did not speak at the last meeting. I'm a cattle farmer, general contractor, developer. I grew up in this community. I was born and raised in Bloomington. I now reside on a cattle farm a mile out of the county due to some of the cost implications of buying land and trying to farm in the county. As a father of a 4-H'er, as a builder, as a farmer, I feel the CDO is not near ready to be passed. I feel like you guys should back up. You've got a panel of constituents out here as elected officials, as a panel. Listen to your public, listen to your community. Pick a panel of farmers and builders and realtors and nurses. Sit down and talk to them and make some changes to this CDO for the future of our kids and your kids and the community and the prosperity of everyone involved. Please take time, and I just appeal to your heartstrings to listen to the people that are come up here to speak over the last couple of meetings and make some changes. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We'll turn now to our next in-person guest. If you could sign in, state your name, whether you live, work, or recreate in the county, and then whether or not you spoke at last week's meeting. You'll have 3 minutes.
Lisa Funkhauser Barnes, lifelong Monroe County resident and the 6th generation growing up on the same farm in Monroe County. Just a couple of points that haven't been made yet. Years ago, Dave Schilling will remember, we came before this board to expand a business, aggregate business, and we went through all of the steps. It took many, many months, only to find out that in the end, the state laws regulated or what really ruled in our situation. So we spent a ton of money, went through the BZA, and I don't know if the BZA the Board of Zoning Appeals has changed the way they do things or not, but we weren't even allowed to speak at that hearing. So it cost us a lot of money, it cost the county a lot of money, but we won. So I just would encourage you to really look at this CDO and make sure that your regulations aren't infringing on what is already in place with the state, and someone else is going to sue you, and you're going to have to backpedal on that. That makes you look kind of bad. So I would just encourage that as well. And I'm able to be here tonight because I show real estate, show property, and there are only 60 properties in the county right now that fit into the $225,000 or less range. Several of those are condos or properties that have HOA fees that drive my folks out of that range. So there were 6 cash offers on this property, so I didn't get to show them today, but that's why I'm able to be here. So I just would encourage you to, a lot of people, a lot of devotion went into that white paper. I would just suggest that you take a really close look at that and some of these folks have really spoke their minds tonight, and I think it's worth listening to. Thank you.
Thank you for coming up to speak tonight. Okay, we'll turn to our next in-person guest. If you could sign in, state your name, whether you live, work, or recreate in the county, and then whether or not you spoke at last week's meeting. You'll have 3 minutes.
I was not here, and so this is my first time. My name is Cheryl Langdon. I've only lived in Monroe County for going on 5 years. I'm new here. I came here to retire. That's a surprise, right? But I have less than an acre property, and it is precious to me. So yeah, I do want to have my little say. I don't have a lot of land, but hey, I want to make sure I get mine in there. Okay, first I'm going to quote John Muir. In every walk in nature, one receives far more than he seeks. I've spent today and yesterday canvassing neighborhoods in a 2-mile radius around my home, which sits near the jail proposal on Vernal Pike, because I wasn't asked for my approval of the removal of those natural spaces for an obtrusive, looming facility that will depreciate my home. Land barons are out of control. It seems like hypocrisy has reared its ugly head when private citizens and residents don't have a voice about government overreach to remove natural habitat in our backyards for government tax-funded structures that are impeding on these natural spaces, but the same government has the right to impede on my personal choices and my personal property, and I pay taxes on that as well. I support Habitat for Humanity, and I'd rather see the use of the land in my residential community for the use of Habitat for Humanity than an eyesore of a county jail justice complex. The stewardship of land management is very important to me, especially when I only own less than an acre, and it's very dear to my heart. When I wanted to add a room to my home, I was required to send letters to my surrounding neighbors and notify them about my intentions. I believe county officials should be required to personally notify each resident within 2-mile radius of any building of a large facility that impacts their lives, removing natural habitat. Land management partnership goes both ways. To quote John Muir again, I care to live only to entice people to look at nature's loveliness. Thank you.
Thank you for coming forward to speak tonight. We could turn now to our next in-person speaker. If you could sign in, state your name, whether you live, work, or recreate in the county, and then whether or not you spoke at last week's meeting. You'll have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Megan Parmenter. I am a Monroe County resident and property owner outside of the city of Bloomington. I am also employed in Monroe County as a teacher, and I was in the overflow area of last week's meeting, but I did not speak. Thank you for providing the opportunity to share feedback on the county development ordinance. I am concerned about the lack of sewer access. Affordable neighborhoods with single-family homes like I would like to purchase as a single working person. I do currently own a townhouse with a shared wall and driveway, but I would like a single-family home, and those are not available now that are affordable for me. And under this plan, they will continue to not be available. The City of Bloomington Utilities will not be extending any sewer service outside of the city limits unless there is a will serve, period. If the property is able to be developed by the county, it will be at a higher cost to the developer and thus to the buyer, pricing people like me out. Or developers may look at areas in the county contiguous to the city, request annexation to the city, and connect to city sewer, which after successful trial against annexation, volunteer annexation of fringe areas into the city is not what I believe the county wants to occur. Second, I am concerned about the 25-year moratorium for subdividing property. I believe that property owners should be able to subdivide as they wish. We do not know what the next 25 years will bring, and that seems like an exceptionally long time to implement deed restrictions. Finally, I'm concerned that the CDO is being revised for implementation of a 2012 comprehensive plan. I strongly believe that a comprehensive plan projecting a future of growth, or at least not regression, should be completed first, then knowing what our community and leaders envision for the next decade, and then update and implement the new CDO. Our community heading into 2025 is not the same as it was in 2012 when this was developed. The proposed CDO stated as its purpose to promote the orderly, responsible, and beneficial development in land use and business enterprises within the county jurisdiction area. Although economic growth is not directly addressed in its purposes, I hope that the intent is to promote responsible economic growth. We have beautiful scenery, pristine lakes, protected forests, and great local schools. Unfortunately, it is very difficult for a home buyer to find a home to purchase. Purchasing a home is a gateway to building wealth, often referred to as the American dream, and I'm gravely concerned that my students will not be able to independently achieve that dream in Monroe County. The stability that homeownership contributes to the well-being of a community and sense of place is vital to a community's responsible growth. Stagnation will lead to our community's deterioration, which is not desirable. We are so fortunate to be at this crossroads and be able to direct the future of Monroe County to allow more families to flourish here. I encourage you to create more opportunities for the American dream and consider updates to the proposed CDO as requested by hundreds of residents of Monroe County. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you for coming forward to speak tonight. So we can turn now to our next in-person speaker, and I want to mention to anybody that may still be downstairs, we've only got 2 people lined up, so if you're wishing to speak, please go ahead and come up to the 3rd floor. If you're in the audience here and wish to speak, go ahead and line up on the wooden bench. So, and if you're online, please go ahead and raise your virtual hand to be added to the queue. So we can turn now to our next in-person speaker. If you could state your name, whether you live, work, or recreate in the county, and then whether or not you spoke at last week's meeting, you'll have 3 minutes.
My name's Franklin Andrew. My wife and I have owned our property since 1992. A lot of people on the south side know us as Clear Creek Farm. Been before this board, before the commissioners, for so many years that it becomes exhausting. Our perils with our property started in 1992. when the county decided that they wanted to put a walking path through my property. A walking path that I didn't want, nor did any of our neighbors want. So we sued. We won that court case, the only court case in the United States won at the U.S. Court of Appeals, and we stopped Monroe County from taking our property. Then I wake up to find out that Monroe County still considers themselves to have an easement on my property. And the way this curtain ordinance is written, my piece of property, which has the original 1864 farmhouse and my current home, would only be permitted to have 2 more residential structures constructed on 210 acres. Not only is that asinine, but it will cause me to have to sell that property at such an exorbitant rate that no one will be able to afford to build a home on it. Rick Martin came up with this concept of parent parcels. No one in the county supported it when it was first initiated, except for a handful of individuals that like to have high-density housing, restrict vehicular traffic, and cause people to live in close proximity to downtown Bloomington. And now you're doing it again. You've already grossly restricted the property uses in Monroe County. There's already enormous acres that have been permanently removed from development in the form of parks, Indiana University, conservancy easements, classified forest properties. Every time this takes place, property taxes go up. Every time property taxes go up, people have to abandon their family farm or their family dream of living in Monroe County. We've been fortunate enough to be able to absorb the exorbitant property taxes that we pay. Very few people are willing to pay $15,000, $16,000 a year to say they have the right to live in Monroe County. It takes a lot of effort and it takes a lot of hard work and dedication for me to raise enough cattle, sell enough crops to pay all of my expenses and still cover my insurance costs and my property taxes. But that seems to fall on deaf ears. And one gentleman said it correctly. You're not leaders, you're representatives. I can repeat everything all these people have said in ad nauseum, but it makes no difference. You're going to make the decision that fits your own personal beliefs, and we're going to have to toe the line or we'll have to move out of the county. And that's an unfortunate reality because there's a lot of good people here who know much more about how to develop their land than a group of individuals who's never taken a walk through that property.
Sorry to interrupt you, but your 3 minutes are up, but we appreciate your comments tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll turn now to our next in-person speaker. If you could sign in, state your name, whether you live, work, or recreate in the county, and then whether or not you spoke at last week's meeting. You'll have 3 minutes.
Hi there, my name is Holland Nightenhelser, 20-year resident of the county. I live here with my wife. I also work and recreate here. Some of my concerns are general, but some of them are a bit more pointed, and I'll be echoing some sentiments that we've already heard tonight, but I felt compelled to get up and say something because it feels like the right thing to do. My concerns are mostly about the stringent nature of the CDO. I mean, just generally speaking, if you're not fostering growth, then you're doing the opposite. You know, if you're not fostering growth, then you're inhibiting growth. And I could see that as problematic in the future. I'm concerned that the proposed CDO regulations might make life harder for some of the people who live here. Might make it harder for people to buy homes by limiting the residential housing growth, which could be problematic. Limiting the economy by making it harder to grow businesses. And for people who want to live here and work here, it's going to be harder for them to do so. Now, home ownership is near and dear to me, but I don't think I'm unique in that. I would imagine that home ownership is near and dear to everybody in this room, and for good reason. It's one of the primary tools that we have, especially for young folks or people who don't have anything, by which they can acquire something, to make something of themselves, have a little bit of upward social mobility. The American dream was mentioned earlier. So to that person or family who might want to buy a home, but there isn't one for them on the market, or the ones that are on the market are priced too high for them. I don't think it would be right for any of us in this room to look at that person and say, oh, well, I have a home, so I'm not concerned with your situation. Or to look at that same person with the same problem and say, oh, well, there's a 4-story apartment building right there. You could just move in there and pay somebody else rent for the rest of your life. And again, if you're not fostering growth, you are doing the opposite. So I think the essence of my concern, and I'm not necessarily here for myself tonight, I think there's a population of people in this county who don't have a voice here right now. And that was my motivation to get up. But I feel like we are facing a situation where we might be taking opportunity from people, taking opportunity from the next generations. And I just hope that that's at the front of your minds. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So I want to make a final call for anyone that may be on the first floor of the courthouse that wishes to speak. Please go ahead and come up to the room. We've only got 2 additional speakers queued up. So if you're downstairs and wish to speak, please make your way upstairs now. Or if you're online and wish to speak, this will be the last call for virtual attendees to raise your hand. So we'll now turn back to our next in-person speaker. If you could state your name, whether you live, work, or recreate in the county, and then whether or not you spoke at last week's meeting, you'll have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Rachel Peden McCarty. I live, work, and recreate here in Monroe County. I did not speak last week. I'm a very proud resident of the Maple Grove neighborhood, and our family has lived there since 1941. We have not divided any of our land. So it's concerning. My parents are nearing their 80s, and eventually land will have to be divided. And I would like to be able to give my children some land one day. I don't want to think about that now, but it would be nice not to have to wait until they're 45 to do that. I was a little bit surprised when the CDO came out and it said that the rural neighborhood was a part of the agricultural section, but Maple Grove was not listed because Maple Grove was the first historic neighborhood in the state to be recognized in 1998. And today I learned about the map with the legend, and I could see the different colors. And I saw that Harrodsburg has that rural neighborhood distinction, but nothing on Maple Grove does. As my brother and I eventually may inherit our parents' farm, we will probably be looking for other ways to make some money on that agricultural farm because we don't want to develop it into homes. And so I have a concern if we want to buy or build a agricultural center, we would be limited to 40 events a year. And on the page it says a maximum of 40. So I don't know if that is just a double typo having that second word, but that's on page, I think, 69. And I'm also concerned that the home I live now is now switching to residential. We raise rabbits, and our rabbits are at the farm, but if I were to have them at our house, we would be limited to 15 or less rabbits. We live a mile away from our farm, so I'm not going to do that. But then I wonder what's the cost of getting to apply for a variance if we were wanting to expand past that. I am the Community and Outreach Coordinator for Monroe County Farm Bureau, and in one of the sections it says if you have between a quarter and a half acre or whatnot, you would be limited to 4 hens. But rabbits are also a small animal, and female rabbits are called does. The boys are bucks, they're not hens. So then you might have some language change there as well. I would encourage you to meet with other members of the Monroe County Farm Bureau and some of the other landowners, and so that we can assist you with maybe some other language changes. Thank you so very much.
Thank you for speaking tonight. Okay, we can turn now to our next in-person guest. If you could come forward, sign in, state your name, whether you live, work, or recreate in the county, and whether or not you spoke at last week's meeting, you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Raleigh Mason, not like the city, but like Raleigh Fingers, Raleigh Massimino. I look forward to reading the meeting minutes after to see how that's spelled. But my concern, I have 3 points that I wanted to bring up. One, I own a business here. We've been in the area for about 10 years and business for about 8. So we service buyers in the area that are coming into the Monroe County and Bloomington. And over those years, I've seen the clientele change quite a bit, where we were servicing a lot of younger families starting homes back when we started. And it has drastically, or over time, certainly drastically changed, where we are now seeing not so much younger families, certainly no young people just graduating college. We're seeing more people that are maybe investors, are coming from out of the area because they have a lot more money. They sold a house where they could move here and afford it very comfortably. So I wanted to at least point to that as a fear that I have in this area, and the declining demographics of younger folks and people moving or staying here from college. Secondly, it's a point that's been brought up a lot, and that just has to do with, I have a son who's 21 years old, currently in college, and we'll see where he ends up, but the hope that he has is certainly to be in this area, somewhere in the sports realm. We know as his parents that it's just not attainable. We know this based on his work conditions, what he'll be making, and know that he'll have to live outside the county or maybe somewhere else in the state, which is disheartening. Many people have touched on that. I won't stay on that too long. The third point I have, though, is as a member of the Exchange Club of Northside and Bloomington, a past president, we work with HUD-VASH a lot, and that's dealing with veterans who are unhoused. These are veterans and their families. I can't tell you the number of times we've dealt with calls from HUD-VASH seeking for our help in helping veterans, either helping them move to a new location, maybe helping with moving costs, first month's rent, security deposit. Now, these are folks that are maybe not living in residential units and buying houses, but certainly a byproduct of the housing affordability issue that's right now going on, where a lot of these veterans are being moved because they can no longer afford to live where they currently are, which is just an apartment, because the costs have gone up so drastically for them, they have to move. And where they're going, it's very disheartening, to be honest with you. So 3 points there I wanted to bring up. But again, we've not talked much about certainly unhoused veterans. It's a big part for us at the Exchange Club. And I want to be sure we think about all the effects of this proposed CDO and affordability, not just for those living here currently, children, but those other areas. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. If we have anybody else in person that wishes to speak, you're welcome to come to the podium. You could sign in, state your name, whether or not you spoke at last meeting. Since we are continuing this meeting from the last time, our rules of procedure state you cannot speak twice in the same meeting. So if you spoke previously, please state that.
I did speak previously, even though you didn't recognize me, Jeff.
I recognize you this time, though, so unfortunately we can't allow someone to speak twice in the same meeting. But if you do have additional comments to make, you're welcome to reach out to planning
I've got
staff.
different topics. Is that okay?
We haven't allowed anybody else to speak for a second time, so you're welcome to submit those to the planning staff.
I will do that, and I will walk away from the podium graciously saying that I'm just so happy that there's been so many people speak about the taking out the 25-year moratorium. I'm glad the public's listening. I hope you do too. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for coming back again this week, Bernie. Okay, I will make a quick announcement that if there's anybody downstairs or online who wishes to speak, please raise your virtual hand. If you're downstairs, please come forward. It appears that we're to our last speaker. If there's anybody else here in the room who has not spoken yet that wishes to, please go ahead and come up to the bench. So we can turn now to our next in-person speaker. If you could state your name, whether or not you live, work, or recreate in the county, and whether or not you spoke at last week's meeting. You'll have 3 minutes.
My name is A.J. Bolin. I do live here and work here and a lifelong resident, like so many of the folks that I see here tonight and that have spoke at the previous meeting, which is great to see everyone coming out to voice their opinion and their concerns. And I had a long list of notes here, but a lot of it's been covered, so I just want to share some of what I experience on a daily basis in the world of real estate here locally, in the Bloomington and surrounding area, which the surrounding area is becoming more and more important. It was mentioned earlier, the number of houses, I think at the $225,000 point. When I look at our personal sales over the last 2 years, there's a trend at $300,000 and below where the last 12 months, 50% of the transactions that we have done with our clients have been in the surrounding counties. The previous 12 months, only 30% of those transactions were done in the surrounding counties. The point there is Bloomington and Monroe County as a whole, it continues to become more and more unaffordable for most folks, especially younger folks just starting out, maybe looking for their first home. We don't have a good pool of properties for them. And obviously we have a shortage of housing, and I know that's what a lot of folks have voiced their concern on tonight. We truly, and we hear this term all the time, we truly need more affordable housing. But the way this CDO is written right now is going to do nothing but make that more difficult to obtain and achieve. There's no question about that. We also hear from a lot of clients, whether they're looking to buy ground and build new homes, or maybe they are just looking to make a change. A lot of folks don't want to try to buy here because of all the restrictions, and they just don't want to deal with that whole process, right? So that's been an issue for certain. And a lot of folks, lifelong residents in a lot of cases, have chosen to move from Monroe County to some of the outlying counties where they're not dictated to and told what they can and can't do with their ground. They've got more freedom on the property that they own, and they're tired of being in Monroe County where it just seems like their property taxes continue to increase and they're not really sure where all that money's going. We've heard the term of building up instead of building out, so we have more houses, right? Well, most people, we've heard a lot here this evening about the American dream. Most people in their version of the American dream when it comes to owning their own house is having a house and maybe a half an acre or an acre or maybe 5 acres, and they can have some chickens, some 4-H animals, whatever the case may be. They don't want to build up. They don't want to live in apartments and continue paying rent. They want a place of their own where they can do what they want to do. So,
and sorry to cut you off, but your 3 minutes are up, so we appreciate you speaking tonight.
Thank you.
We will turn to our next in-person guest, and then we'll go to our virtual guest, Doug Bruce, after that. So if you could sign in, state your name, whether you live, work, or recreate in the county, and then let us know whether or not you spoke at last week's meeting. You'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Sam Figg. I am a lifetime member. I've lived in Monroe County all my life. So has my family. The piece of ground that I'm attached to, that I inherited from my family, was deeded to them in the 1900s. We have a farm family. My father served as the township trustee for close to 30 years. My sister served for township for 20 years probably. Myself, I served on the school board. I have been employed in the construction industry since 1978 in some form or fashion. I currently work for a lumber company here in town. Then I deal with some of these men that have spoke here tonight that want to provide affordable housing. But because of the limitations that's been put on them in this county, they cannot build an affordable housing. They want to come in at a price range of $250,000. It's not possible to develop and build a house for $250,000 in this county as it currently stands. I also have children living on my farm. One daughter has built a house there. My other daughter has a home site that she will eventually, hopefully, build on. And I would like to be able to provide a property for my grandchildren to build on. And I think that my family, owning property in this county for as long as they have, ought to have the right to provide a place for their children to live. And under the current proposal, they won't be able to because we've already let the 2 daughters build on the property. I would love for my grandchildren to have the same opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we'll turn now to Doug Bruce on Teams. If you could unmute, state your name, whether you live, work, or recreate in the county, and whether or not you spoke at last week's meeting. You'll have 3 minutes.
Yes, I'm Doug Bruce. I did not speak at the last meeting, so this is my first time. Although I have followed this, I am a local architect. I grew up here in Bloomington. My parents own businesses here. And I have a couple of things I'd like to say. First, I really am excited to see the number of people that have spoken for this. It is really nice to see a lot of people have looked through a lot of this document. As an architect, I deal with homeowners and people wishing to move here and people wishing to add on to their home, people wishing to live next to their aging parents. And so I have a lot of concerns about sizes of lots and how we can keep it affordable for people to, we call it aging in place. Either you want to stay at your homestead or you want your children to live next to you to take care of you, especially as healthcare costs rise. So that is a big concern. I echo many of the sentiments that we've heard over the last 2 days. I think there's a lot of things in this plan that still need to be studied, and I don't think we're ready for any kind of decision yet on this. A couple of other things. I have a rental house in Clear Creek, and I've kept that affordable. I barely make any money on it, but I've had the same tenant living there, and I bought it from his grandparents, who were close friends with my grandparents, and I've kept the rent affordable. But as the taxes have gone up and the cost of having that rental go up, I have to raise those rents. I would like to see Clear Creek looked at as a rural district, not unlike Smithville or Harrodsburg. I think we need a rural district plan for that area. I think you're starting to see some development there. And I think that becomes a neighborhood activity center where people can walk to and do things. And so I think that's a part of this plan that is missing. And there's a lot of historic homes and history in the Clear Creek area. I think that's something that's missing in this plan. And the other thing I would like to see that I think as we talk about affordable housing, the cost of permitting and the process and the timelines and the steps that homeowners have to go through, I've lost count of the number of clients that have just walked away when I described to them the process and what they have to do and the cost it'll be of our time to walk them through it. So I think that needs to be looked at as well, because this needs to be affordable so that anybody can add on to their home or look at a piece of property and live in this community that we all love. With that, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Bruce. We have one more virtual guest. If there's anybody here in the room that has yet to speak that would like to, please go ahead and come up and sit on the bench to queue up. We could turn now to Valerie Pena online. If you could unmute, state your name, whether you live, work, or recreate in the county, and then whether or not you spoke last week. You'll have 3 minutes. Valerie, if you're able to unmute, you're welcome to start speaking. Do we have anybody else here in person who wishes to speak? Valerie, we'll come back to you.
There we go.
Oh, there you go. Okay. You'll have 3 minutes if you could state
I
your
apologize. My name is Valerie Pena. I live and work in Monroe County, as well as own property at Lake Lemon. two areas that I'd like to touch on. One, with Lake Lemon having a new overlay, I have spoken to many of my neighbors, and I think a lot of them were not aware that they were, to their fault or not, that there is now a Lake Lemon overlay. And so it feels like maybe some stronger outreach to those particular residents would be important to make sure that they understand what's in the CDO and making sure that they understand what's going to happen to their property. Secondly, though, I'd like to speak in my role as the vice chair for the Bloomington Economic Development Corporation. As many of you know, BEDC is a nonprofit that works to attract and grow quality employment across the county and to make sure that all our neighbors have an opportunity to achieve economic vitality and a high quality of life. First off, I want to thank the Plan Commission for hearing the public comments and for your commitment to this project. I think all of us have seen the great interest in this and how important it is. At this time, we would like, though, to urge Monroe County to look at extending the time to review and revise the CDO. This will allow some time to address some of these key concerns that we've heard both last week and this evening. Just given the sheer length of the CDO and the volume of feedback that we've had, we've seen such a high interest from the public. Asking for just slightly more time to give the public the ability to really truly digest and address some of these. If passed in its current form, we believe that the CDO could exacerbate some current challenges for obtaining attainable housing and talent attraction and retention. While the CDO is based on the dated comprehensive plan and while limiting opportunities for some affordable residential growth, we definitely see these impacts not only to families, but our employers, local government revenue, as well as the whole community. Talent and attainment for attainable housing are critical for making our community thrive. Monroe County's prime workforce population has been decreasing while our over 65 population continues to increase. But we all know that quality jobs follow the workforce and workforce follows the jobs. So if we'd like to see our graduates stay here and our community continue to grow, then looking at making sure affordable housing is there for them. So if anything, we ask for a possibility of slowing down, having some additional roundtable conversations with the community to identify the areas of common ground, help us find those solutions that are challenges. I think we can all do that together. Rural preservation and housing are both very possible. We just do not need to be at odds. And the BEDC team has shared some very specific recommendations on that, and we hope everybody gets a chance to look at that. But we feel that the draft of the CDO has some great strengths that can be built upon, and that with collaboration across the county, we can continue to work on those challenges. Thank you.
Thank you for speaking tonight. We'll turn now to our next in-person guest. If you could come forward, sign in, state your name, whether you live, work, or recreate here in the county, and then whether or not you spoke at last week's meeting. You'll have 3 minutes. And again, if there's anybody else here in the room that has not yet spoken that wishes to, please come up to the bench to line up.
Good evening, I'm Susan Graves. I'm a local realtor in town. I've been in the community forever. There's some ideas that have been presented in the past few days that I just really would like for people to think about. The cost of the land. You hear so many people talk about how many people have been up here and they've said they cannot afford to live here and they had to go to adjacent counties. What is it going to do if the people who have at least 25 acres or more have already subdivided it and you've now got a restriction placed against them from even being able to subdivide it further for grandchildren or for a friend? I mean, this just does not make sense. It really doesn't. Why would we limit after they make that one time, limit them for 25 years? We've got the same kind of thing going on right now in the sense of my sister and I have a farm that farm has presented the opportunity for us to learn a lot as far as going to the community market for years. Grew up going to that, raising vegetables and all that. Okay, we've got a farm there that this was talked about more than a year ago, and we were asked if we had concerns about whether a person could subdivide and such, that you had to get information brought down, which we did. We've yet to ever hear anything from anybody about that. Because if we were going to take and try to subdivide or sell it to someone who could subdivide it, we can't do anything to this point because of that. So the cost of the land, in order for that to become affordable, any place, we need to have the ability to subdivide. I mean, if it's truly your land, how can you possibly say that it's a reasonable thing for you to be able to divide it twice, one time to two people, and then that I'm sorry, sir, but you cannot subdivide it again for another 25 years? I mean, then, yeah, those are some of the biggest ones that I have about it. I just really feel like there needs to be more involvement. This needs to be reworked. I think that we're really missing the boat. And if you hear so many people who come up here time after time and say it's not affordable, and then we do tricks like this, I appreciate all that you do, but I think this needs to go back to the drawing board. And please try to get as many people involved in it to come up with a really good one. I'm certain that we do have a great place to live, but we also need to all work together. So any help on that front would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you for speaking tonight. We'll turn to our next in-person guest. If you could sign in, state your name, whether you live, work, or recreate in the county, and then whether or not you spoke at last week's meeting, you'll have 3 minutes.
Good evening. I'm Richard Martin. Some of you have known me as a member of your Plan Commission at one point, many years ago, which actually I served on the Plan Commission at the time this effort got underway. It has been a while since I've been off of the Plan Commission, so you've been at it for a while. I want to address a couple of issues. One has to do with the way it appears the assignment of zoning districts to some properties was done based upon tax records rather than property deeds. In Monroe County, many parcels of deeded property that are fairly large are actually composed of different tax parcels. The land that my wife and I own is one deeded parcel, but it's 4 different tax parcels. Because of the way you assign a zone based upon the size of the tax parcel, that particular deed now has 2 different zoning elements on it. There is in your ordinance a mention that when interpreting the effect of zoning, you take the most restrictive application of the zoning ordinance and apply it to the entire deeded parcel. Now, in some cases, that may be appropriate, and certainly in my case, I think that's true. In some cases, that may not be appropriate. So somebody's going to come and ask you about why you've done that. I think you need to clearly identify what is more restrictive in the terms of the ordinance, because you have a great number of different kinds of rules and regulations. You may end up with situations where something which is fairly minor is more restrictive in that sense, and you'd be applying that to the entire parcels when there was something else in the ordinance which was less restrictive, which was not being able to reply. So I think you need to understand that there is this notion of restriction where you've got multiple tax parcels and thus multiple zoning designations on a property. That's the one thing. The second one I want to talk about is it as my role in the development of infrastructure. I serve both on the Monroe County Redevelopment Commission, where we deal with highways in the TIF areas, and I serve on the Monroe County the South Central Regional Sewer District, where we deal with sewer plants that are in Monroe County and in Lawrence County. There is a tendency to try and leverage infrastructure as a controlling mechanism for land use. And I want to caution you against that. In particular, in my case.
And I'm sorry to cut you off, Mr. Martin, but your 3 minutes are up, so we appreciate you coming out to speak tonight.
I didn't hear what he said.
Oh, sorry.
I'm going to continue. It's a new topic.
Your 3 minutes are actually up, sir.
What do you want me to do?
Sorry, your 3 minutes are up, but if you would like to submit additional feedback, you're welcome to submit it to the planning staff or through monroecdo.com. So thank you. Is there anyone else here in the room who wishes to speak that has not yet had a chance to speak tonight? If there's anyone online, please raise your virtual hand. Not seeing anyone else, I want to thank everybody who took the time to come out and offer feedback tonight. We've appreciated hearing from all of you. So at this point, I will turn to our planning director to talk about next steps.
Sure. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so at this point in the juncture, you have to decide how you want to proceed with the county development ordinance document itself. We've heard a lot of great feedback from folks at the 924 meeting as well as tonight. And so you kind of have two options. One is to take and deliberate and utilize the feedback that we've received to date and direct staff to make those changes. Or the last option I'll share with you is that you could request that the meeting be adjourned and that you forward the draft as of August 16th to the county commissioners. So I'll just go through, I've outlined 4 options for the plan commission to consider. So first option is that you continue this meeting to October 3rd to hear from the public. This would be limited to those that have not already spoke at the 924 meeting or tonight. Option 2 is to close the public testimony and written comment period as of October 1st, and staff is suggesting that you continue this to a regularly scheduled meeting, possibly on November 19th, at which time we would be reviewing another iteration of the CDO. I have a note on the bottom of the screen also for you to consider, which is if by vote you would like to rehear speakers that spoke either last week or tonight at the 11/19 meeting, you could do that. Otherwise, you could limit it to new speakers only. Option 3 is again continue this meeting to November 19th, but you could close the testimony portion, but allow an extension for written testimony until Sunday, October 6th. And then option 4 is that the Plan Commission could make a recommendation to the county commissioners tonight and adjourn the public hearing portion. And just again, I'll note that that would be forwarding an August 16th draft of the CDO. We have made edits since that time that would not be incorporated if you voted tonight.
Okay, thank you, Jackie. So we'll turn now to members of the Plan Commission to discuss which route we would like to go with. So, Mr. Enright Randolph, do we want to start with you to offer comment?
Yeah, well, my first comment is we definitely don't take any action for any recommendation tonight. I guess I would like to hear from my colleagues, but I'm leaning towards more option 3, where we continue this meeting to 11/19. Close the testimony, but allow written testimony until Sunday, or option 2. Actually, let me correct my statement. I'm leaning towards option 2 or option 3. With that said, I do have a comment. I'm actually going to change my first point to my second. So during the comprehensive plan, it was passed by only 8 members of the Plan Commission. My predecessor, Kevin Enright, walked out of a meeting as he stated that his frustration that the commissioners would not appoint a 9th member to the Plan Commission. The comprehensive plan, which is really the fundamental basis of what we're doing here, that's the guiding document. The ordinance is really how we get there. Was moved forward by no recommendation. It was a 4-4 split. And then the Board of Commissioners adopted to a 2-1. So I've stated from day one that we should revisit the comprehensive plan and really look at how to make this new county development ordinance work. And this is what I was going to lead with. What I would like to see is predictability, flexibility, and moving away from a one-size-fits-all zoning like pre-existing non-conforming that can limit growth, and or one-size-fits-all ordinances. There's a number of different reasons, but I'd like a process that focused more on the lay of the land. If that is more housing density, smaller lots, not increasing the 25 conservancy area to 50 foot as proposed in the new draft, or changing and revisiting the 25-year moratorium to ensure that we are allowing the best use of that property and protecting our environmental resources, reducing negative adverse impact, creating open spaces, and lessen the onerous, and I actually have rental burden on our community and all of the future folks that want to live in Monroe County and the current folks that live in Monroe County. And so those are my comments, and like I said, I'm really leaning towards option 2 and also allowing a second round of public feedback.
Thank you, Mr. Enright Randolph. Councilmember Munson, do you have comments?
Yes, thank you. I'm not sure the options all spell out my main concern, which is that we didn't get to hear completely from people who were making a point and ran out of time. I would like to make sure that people who wish to make written comments, whether they are new comments or whether they are a continuation of their spoken comments, I want to make sure that these get to the Plan Commission. And what option does that takes care of that, Ms. Jelen?
I think that option 3, which is to allow written testimony until Sunday, would be an option. Or if you considered option 1 and you amend the rules of procedure and hear from the public again on the 3rd.
No, I'm not in favor of option 1, so I'm more inclined to option 3. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Munson. Mr. Ferris, do you have comments you'd like to share?
I support option 2.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ferris. Commissioner Thomas, do you have comments?
I do like option 3. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Clements, do you have comments you wish to share?
Well, written option 3. It's up on the screen. Yes.
Sorry, I
3.
just didn't hear what.
No.
Yes. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the public for all of their good work and sharing their insights both from their personal property and from their professional experiences with us. I do believe that we have reached a certain amount of redundancy. In other words, we are hearing the same issues. So I feel as though we know we have included those comments into the record. And there has been a real significant written comment legacy as well, and some of the comments that have not been brought up in the room are also exist because they've been interacting with our exceptional planning staff. And so I would be in favor of option 3 because I think that it would still be good to hear from Mr. Martin, for example, and Mr. Garitas, for example, and they have an opportunity, and anyone else who would like to continue to put feedback into the system, that if we close down the public hearing now and keep the written comment open, it gives us the maximum opportunity to hear new ideas. So I would be in favor of option 3. And thank you to the public who has attended.
Thank you, Ms. Clements. Mr. Ullman, do you have feedback?
Yeah, I'll keep it brief since I won't repeat everything that's already been said, but I too am in favor of option 3, and I as well want to echo the fact that I appreciate everybody that has taken time out of their evening to be here and has taken time already to submit public comment, whether written or in person. So I appreciate you guys being active members of the community. That's what we need to be able to do our job to the best of its ability. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ullman. We'll turn now to our Plan Commission members who are online. Ms. Owens, do you have any comments?
Yes, I like option 3 as well. I think that part of the benefit of having some written testimony and reviewing what staff is able to capture and put down for us to look over in its entirety will help us to answer some of the misperceptions that are out there. And I would hope that people who commented will take time to review the feedback that comes from their comments as well. And so I think option 3 gives us the best shot at that.
Thank you, Ms. Owens. Mr. Pittsford, do you have comments?
Just briefly, thank you for allowing me to appear virtually tonight. Since I sat next to Mr. Ullman, I don't think he wants whatever I have going home with him tonight. And I've coughed my way through a part of this meeting, so I was not disruptive here at home. So I am grateful for that opportunity. I believe option 3 is good. I'm always a little bit disturbed when public speakers are cut off by a time limit, even though I recognize the need for a time limit. It's just a dual-edged sword. And lastly, to everybody who did come out to speak publicly, I want to express my thank you for those folks who did that. I think research indicates people would rather have dental work done than speak publicly by a wide margin. So thank you for coming out and speaking tonight. But option 3 is my preference.
Do we need a motion?
I was wondering if I could correct my statement. I was copying and pasting these options on the fly, so I really was leaning towards 3. I guess the nuance on 2 is it moves to a admin plan commission meeting, and I just wanted to correct my statement. I just was trying to do too much all at once.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Enright Randolph. And Commissioner Thomas, I do believe we need a motion. So
I move that we continue this meeting to November 19th and close the testimony, the public comment, verbal testimony, but we will continue to allow written testimony through the end of the day, Sunday, October 6th.
A second.
October 6th.
Okay.
Jackie?
It's been moved and seconded to continue this meeting to November 19th and close the public testimony, but allow written testimony until end of day, Sunday, October 6th. Do we consider end of day 5 p.m. just for clarification for people?
Sure.
End of day 5 p.m. Okay. A vote yes is a vote to approve the continuation of this meeting to November 19th as stated. And then at the November 19th meeting, would you all be deciding by vote whether to entertain rehearing speakers in case staff gets that question?
I think we could make a separate motion after we vote on this one, if that would be okay.
Okay. All right, so this is just for the first part.
Yeah.
A vote yes is to continue the meeting to November 19th. Scott Ferris?
Yes.
Jeff Morris?
Yes.
Sure.
Yes.
Edward Ullman,
Yes.
Dee Owens,
Yes.
Jerry Pittsford,
Yes.
Julie Thomas,
Yes.
Margaret Clements,
Yes.
Tron Enright Randolph.
Yes.
Motion carries 9-0.
Okay, so our next item for discussion is the comment Jackie just made, the second paragraph on our screen. Discussion about whether we will entertain rehearing speakers from last week's meeting and tonight's meeting at the October 19th meeting. Otherwise, this would be limited to new speakers only. So, Mr. Enright Randolph, do you have comments on that?
I would like to reopen it for any twice and new speakers. I won't be supporting anything else.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Enright Randolph. Councilmember Munson?
Will there be changes in the CDO that the public would have a chance to review and comment upon?
Yes, so basically from this meeting on, any changes that we make will come back to you as a new iteration of the CDO, and it may be that somebody that spoke tonight, a change that they're requesting might not be reflected in the draft. So if we don't allow them to speak again, they wouldn't be able to state that.
I would like people to be able to speak again. Thank you.
Okay, and just to iterate, I think it was mentioned, the date, I want to make sure it's clear to the public, November 19th is the meeting date.
Yes.
Yep.
Mr. Ferris?
I agree.
Okay. Commissioner Thomas, do you have feedback?
I'm concerned because there is no end to this. And we've heard from the public, and we've gotten a lot of written comments, which are really interesting to read. And we do encourage folks who feel like they were cut off to please submit written comment. But every revision and every iteration cannot be open to public comment because this will never end. And I don't know what the end point is. And we have to balance these things out. I don't think we want to have staff working on this for the next 5 years. I don't think that's fair to them. But I also, if somebody has made a comment, it's going to be reflected in that spreadsheet or it's written comment that's saved in that file. So I don't know why speaking again would be necessary. So I just think we have to move on. The other thing is, just a reminder that when we do this CDO, that there is plenty of opportunity to revise and rewrite and reconsider sections of it. If things change with sewer access from the city, if whatever might happen, we can go, we're not hiring a stone carver for Moses on the Mount here. We are building a CDO, which we've been working on for years with a lot of public comment, and it can and will be changed because circumstances change. And we are open to that. I'm open to that. I know that's part of life. So I just feel like we need to have some finality to this section of what we're working on so that we can actually get some revisions in front of us from planning staff sometime in 2024. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Thomas. Ms. Clements, do you have comments?
Well, this is kind of hard because I'm always hearing from the public, but I feel that we have every possible comment that we could probably have. I don't know what we would be missing. I mean, we've heard about affordable housing. We've heard about subdivision requests. We've heard about people who'd like to keep the rural. We're hearing about so many. We've had the white paper given to us that's been not only entered into the record, but read into the record. And we've heard about economic development and about workforce housing and about housing attainability. And, that we've heard so many of the issues that the public is concerned about. And I don't think that extending the open comment period would provide more saturation or different points of view. And so I guess I'm opposed to extending it because I too would like some finality to this. Yeah, I'd like to just have some finality. You know, we've heard the wonderful recommendations about agriculture, and those have been taken to heart by our planning department. And, you know, landscaping was brought up, lighting was brought up. I don't think we've missed anything from the public, thanks to the public. The public has really provided a lot of scrutiny over this process, and I think that we appreciate that. And we have, I think, every possible comment that could pertain to this CDO. And so I'd like to move on.
Thank you, Ms. Clements. Mr. Ullman?
I think I agree with the comments made about the fact that we do at some point have to close the door on public comment. As much as it is valuable and is needed to be able to properly create a document that serves the public, we do at some point have to be able to close that door to move forward. So I think I too side to the idea of not revisiting or entertaining rehearing speakers on the 11/19 meeting. That being said, I serve on this board because of my position as the Purdue University Extension educator through Agriculture and Natural Resources. My contact can easily be found online if there are especially those comments made that relate to agriculture. If there are comments that you want to address directly to me, I am happy to hear and have that conversation with you directly, and then bring them to the board as need be. But yeah, I do agree that public comment does need to be closed at some point.
Thank you, Mr. Ullman. Ms. Owens, do you have comments?
Yeah, I generally would reflect the last few that we've heard. I think that we're going to have quite a bit of work to do as is staff, reviewing the comments that have already come in. There's still plenty of time to send in more written comments, which are encouraged. And so I think, as Ms. Clements said, that we'll have plenty to review and think about, and make sure that this reflects the best that we can from our public comment. So I would go with closing public comment.
There we go. Mr. Pittsford, do you have comments?
I have already stated, I think those who were cut short by a 3-minute speaking time deserve an opportunity to finish their thoughts, because there is a significant difference in the impact of the spoken word versus a written word that only is read by Planning Commission members and staff by and large. It's kind of hard to rally people around your ideas when your only means of public comment is written. But I'm willing to go with what everybody else decides.
Thank you, Mr. Pittsford. And I have a couple of quick comments before we come back for a motion. But I just want to mention, too, that I think it's important to point out that we've had, Jackie, I'm not sure the number of public listening sessions over the past several years, but I specifically remember some late in 2022 where we asked for public comment, and we've spent numerous meetings since then addressing some of the comments that have been brought forward, very good comments from members of the public, which we very much appreciate. So I think it's important to note that we have had a lot of public comment sessions and made a lot of changes based on that. So I like the fact that we've got a few more days to accept comment for those that were not able to finish their comments tonight, or potentially those that have conversations after the meeting tonight and think of other things they wish to share. So I think it's important that we've got a few more days. But those are my thoughts. So I'd come back now to the Plan Commission to see if we have a motion.
I'd like to make a motion. I would like to motion that we entertain speakers to come and speak twice, or new speakers to speak at our November 19th continuation of this meeting.
I'm sorry, point of order. My motion initially that was passed and accepted was to continue this meeting, but to close testimony. So I'm not sure how that motion fits.
It's my PowerPoint skills on the fly. So, closed testimony for tonight. I did want to just verify, since I've been receiving the questions so frequently, if that is what we would like to say is no speakers at all at the next meeting, then we can do that. But I just want to make sure that was clear, because tonight's testimony has been closed. We're allowing written testimony until October 6th, and then we'll meet again on 11/19. It'll technically be a continuation of this meeting. So if we just close all testimony, all written and verbal testimony by 10/6, then we would just be going to the 11/19 meeting and looking for possibly a motion from the Plan Commission.
I guess I have a point of order. If the motion wasn't clearly read to us and then we went to a roll call, what is the recourse of that? Because it was stated up here we were going to address one part and then the second part afterwards. Because I felt like that was incorporated, but at the same time, it was then discussed that we would separate these two motions, and one would be continuing this, and the other was about public comment. So how does the Plan Commission stand right now as far as what we can do? Because what I just heard is we're not allowed to potentially even address the or the public comment again due to the motion that was misinterpreted and told to us.
Point of order. Jackie, can you read back to us what the motion was that we voted on and that was passed, please?
Sure. Dave, did you want to chime in on Tron's question, or you want me to go ahead and reread the?
Yeah, I mean, the motion says what it says, and it said to close testimony, but there may have been confusion, understandably, about the way the second paragraph was presented. If the Plan Commission feels that there was confusion on that issue, it seems reasonable to accept a new motion, and if it passes, then obviously the people that voted on the first one, or enough of them, didn't understand that. So, I mean, that's up to you,
Thank you,
President Morris. But
I think there was confusion between the two paragraphs on the screen. It sounds like the motion that passed for the first paragraph. Jackie, if you could read that back to us real quick.
I can reread that, and also if you want me to call the roll, I can, based on what it says. But it's the motion on the screen was option 3, which was to continue this meeting to November 19th, close the public testimony, but allow written testimony until Sunday, October 6th at 5 p.m.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Pittsburgh.
Thank you, if I might be recognized. I don't know if this will help, but I think the possibility exists that we will have an administrative meeting before the 19th. We could set the agenda for the meeting of the 19th if there's a will. A majority of the members have a will to hear public hearing. The agenda for the 19th could be written to allow for that.
Thank you, Mr. Pittsburgh. Ms. Clements.
Okay. For some reason, this issue has become rather confused when the motion was pretty clear. Never mind. I think the public deserves to know today, before they leave the room, whether or not we're going to hear additional testimony on November 19th. Now, Mr. Enright Randolph has made a motion. It has not been seconded. Does anyone care to second his motion? Could you read back the motion that he has made?
Sure. So Tron made a motion to allow the Plan Commission to rehear speakers from September 24th and tonight, October 1st, at the 11:19 meeting, and also allow for new speakers.
Okay, so Mr. Enright Randolph has made that motion. Is there, I'm sorry, Mr. Morris.
You're fine. Is there a second to that motion? If there is no second, then this motion dies. Mr. Pittsford, were you wanting to say something?
I just wanted to make a quick note that having a motion such as what was proposed is contradictory to the motion that's already been approved, as Commissioner Thomas pointed out, and that's the reason I wouldn't second it. And my original point stands that if there's a will to reopen public comment, that's something that can be addressed and publicly noticed prior to the 19th. Whether it's known tonight or not, it will be publicly noticed when we undertake the CDO again on the 19th.
Okay. Ms. Clements?
Yes, again, back to my observation and analysis, because I have listened to everyone and I have read through the comments, and we are extending the written comment period through Sunday. I would like to close public comment and not allow for redundancy of comment at our meeting on the November 19th. I don't want to leave that open. I'd like to decide that tonight and allow the public to know that that decision has been made and that they have either to 5 o'clock on Sunday to submit their comments, and then we get on with our work of creating this CDO, which is a really huge project given the amount of comments and the intensity of the comments that have been made. So that is my motion, is to close public comment on the CDO and the written comment tonight, and the written comment by 5 o'clock on Sunday, and that we continue with our deliberation on November 19th.
Okay, do we have a second?
Yeah. Yes, I'm making it clear because Mr. Pittsford. Yes.
Due to the confusion of the way it was presented.
Okay.
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 I second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Jackie, if you could call the roll.
Okay, and this is to, again, continue the meeting to November 19th and close the public testimony, but allow written testimony until Sunday, October 6th. And just to further clarify, that would mean that we would not be taking any further public testimony during the 11:19 meeting. Planning staff will still accept written testimony that will go to the Board of Commissioners, but the deadline for it to be going to the Plan Commission for deliberation would be 10/6. Scott Ferris?
Yes.
Jeff Morris?
Yes.
Cheryl Munson?
I'm conflicted on this, and so let me ask a question, please, before I vote. By 10/16, will members of the public know what changes have come about as a result of the two public hearings?
By 10/16?
Mm-hmm.
Why don't they?
Will they be written and available to the public online?
The latest version of the CDO will be posted online. We still have to schedule an administrative meeting, so it depends on how quickly we can do that.
Okay. So my purpose in wanting to continue to hear from the public is that there may be revisions to what is written for the CDO, and I want the public to be able to comment on that if they wish to do so. So I guess I'm juggling schedules.
So would you like to submit your vote?
I'm just going to abstain.
Okay.
There's no good fit for my concern.
Okay. Edward Ullman?
I'm also going to abstain from voting because I believe that this was a statement that was covered in the first vote, and I don't know how best to vote because of that.
Yeah.
Okay. Dee Owens,
Yes.
Jerry Pittsford,
For reasons already assigned by Edward, I am not going to vote. I abstain.
Julie Thomas,
Yes, again.
Margaret Clemens,
Yes, again.
Tron Enright Randolph.
I want to thank everyone for entertaining the confusion. I don't know if I was the only one over here, but we started to having conversation about public comment again, and it sounded like we were separating those two motions. So I apologize for that. I should have just clarified with Commissioner Thomas on her motion. With that said, I absolutely agree that, you know, we're going to probably make a few adjustments and amendments to this, and I think it is only fair to give folks another a chance to speak to the proposed changes, and then close that comment period after that to get final feedback. There can also be an end date to this and allowing folks to speak again, so I vote no.
Okay, so the motion is approved 5-1 to 3.
Okay, thank you, Jackie, and apologies to everyone for the confusion on that. Since there was confusion, Jackie, would you mind just repeating what was approved so the members of the public understand exactly what we just approved?
Absolutely.
And we understand exactly.
And members of the Plan Commission too.
Yes. So this meeting has been continued to November 19th. We've closed all public testimony and written comment. The deadline for the Plan Commission to receive written testimony is Sunday, October 6th at 5 p.m. So what that means is that on November 19th, when we hold this hearing again, we will not take public comment on this topic.
Okay, thank you, Jackie, and thank you all to the members of the public who came out to speak tonight. We appreciate all of your feedback and all of your comments. Thank you all.
Thank you.
You.